How's your morning been?
It's been good. Yeah, it has been good. What has happened this morning? I was up for a couple of hours overnight with our youngest. She had an unfortunate bedwetting event at
Oh,
1 a.m. So she started taking her nappy off. She has a sleep nappy. She's potty trained. She started
yeah.
taking it off. Like she goes to sleep with it on. I put it to bed last night. Fine. And then Cat will wake up some mornings and she hasn't got a nappy. Like she's just taking it off, but she's somehow in the middle of the night in the pitch black taken it off and then put her pajama bottoms back on, um,
Smart.
like a ninja. And then, um, unfortunately, last night she must have done that between the hours of 8 p.m. and midnight, and then she's needed a wee and she's had a wee. She's had an accident, so she's called out about it. And then she generally struggles as a sleeper. She always has done. So then you have to help
Yeah.
her out, get her back in, all that sort of stuff. So I was up from half past midnight to 2 a.m., which is not ideal at all. So this morning was a slow start, and I sort of got myself into the garage at 10 to 7 for a workout and spent about 15, 20 minutes sipping coffee and stretching and walking to myself, am I not? Come on. And I, with the best intention in the world, I just couldn't. Like I sat on the bike and tried to generate a bit of power, and I just had like nothing. So I was really kind to myself, took it very gently, and managed to get a good sweaty workout in the end. And then yeah, and then everything was plain sailing, and then I literally got a phone call I've been waiting for the last 24 hours at 10 to, 10 to 10. I was like, I've got to take it. But yeah, man, I'm rambling. How are you? You all right?
No, that's good. Do you know what you're actually reminding me? I haven't thought about this for a long time, but I'm just getting reminded of those nights, and it went on for a while, as I recall, of just getting up at 2 in the morning, kind of not really waking up properly, changing a bed, changing pajamas, right? Get back in to bed, get you off to sleep. Now I get to go back to bed, and it all just kind of happening on I'm doing it on autopilot. Um, yeah, wow. And
It's,
just the sleep, the kind of sleep interruption, sleep deprivation. It's pretty wild, actually, isn't it?
it's so bad. Like it really is. We've been on quite a good run. It's probably been 2 weeks actually since we've had an event, which is really good for us. Um, and I get to this point where I'll be in her room and I do a lot of breath work to just keep myself really calm. So just do like your normal box breathing and just really calm, and I get really sleepy and meditative. But then something happens right when I have to creep out, and I get this panic where I'm like, okay, I have to creep, and there's a floorboard outside her bedroom that I
Oh,
must
yeah.
not step on. So I have to ninja my way out, and it's like a real subconscious thing that happens. I'm trying to stay calm, but I have this like fight or flight moment where I'm tiptoeing away, and I'm like, I've made it, and then I'm like, no, my heart rate's up.
How do you know when you haven't made it? Is there like a dad, or like what's the sound? Like
Yeah,
what happens?
yeah. There's like a whingy, sleepy daddy, and shit.
Oh man, God, I'm remembering this now. Wow. And then what do you do with the when you get the call at whatever time it is, 1:30? And is that like, how do you and Kat work it out? Like, who's getting up? Like, do
um,
you ever do the "I'm still asleep, I haven't heard that"?
no, that's never worked. Cat
It's
wears her
never.
heart on her sleeve. Can't get away with
Yeah.
that. There have been times when she's heard it and I'm like dead to the world, so she'll just give me a kick. It's my job.
Okay.
I do the nights. We sort of she's not a great sleeper. Um, she's had a few sleep problems. Since being a mum, really being a parent.
Mhm.
It's just really impacted her. So I'm like, I got it. I'm okay. I'm quite a good sleeper. I'm quite lucky in that regard. I can pretty much fall asleep when I want to. Um, So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So yeah, it's a dad job.
Well, look, this is a whole nother conversation, isn't it? Parenting and sleep. Well, look, wait. So we've got a couple of hours, yeah. Is that right? Okay, awesome. That's cool. And yeah, it was funny because we had that conversation in the garden, didn't we? And it was like, oh man, we've just done the pod. We've literally just done the pod, and we weren't recording it. So I'm not going to try and recreate that, but I think that's a kind of nice way for us to go. That it's just a chat, and we'll keep it pretty open as to where we go. A couple of bases. I thought kind of broadly. I was thinking, it'd be nice to start with your kind of backstory, but by that I mean kind of where it all started for you, like kind of childhood. And I was thinking a little bit about the really nice chat we had on your stag walk that beautiful day in the summer, and I think we were talking about your childhood, and I realized I had some questions, so maybe we'll start there, and then we'll kind of fast forward to rugby, because obviously you played at a really high level, and I think there's some really lovely kind of insights, both in terms of your personal learning, but also I think probably kind of more general leadership development type insights as well on the rugby side. And then we kind of hop, skip, and jump to health and nutrition, which obviously is your domain expertise, and there's lots to get into there. So the kind of work you're doing, principles, insights, etc. Does that sound like a good kind of broad strokes approach?
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah.
Awesome. And then, of course, we can break any time if we want to and all that. It's all pretty good. And as this is demonstrating, I haven't really briefed you until now, so we're going to just keep it fairly loose and fairly open to what shows up.
Love it. Perfect.
All right. Awesome, mate. Okay, well, look, so I'm kind of interested just to kind of go back into where it all started for you, Tom. Like what were you born into? What was the beginning of life like for you? Where did it all start?
I was born into my family. I was the eldest, so I am the eldest. Got one younger sibling, who is 3 years younger than me, Henry, a boy, brother. So 2 boys. Very, very sort of standard 80s, 90s upbringing, I guess. For the 4 of us, mum, dad, 2 boys, and my grandparents lived down the road, so they lived about a mile away from us.
So where is this geographically?
Blackpool, near Blackpool. So Poulton the Fylde is the geographical location, Lancashire. So we sort of lived very close to the town, or I guess it's a town now. It always felt like a village, but I don't think it is anymore. You could walk everywhere. We'd walk to school when we got a bit older, and we'd walk to the shops. Just walk everywhere really. And then my grandparents lived about a mile away on the river. My granddad was a big sailor. That was kind of what he did. He built his own business. He built a kitchens business. So it was Eastham's Kitchens, and had a big factory, and all of our kitchen units in our house sort of had the name on it and the logo, which was kind of cool.
So he built that up himself.
Yeah, self-made.
Had his own factory, had a whole team working for him, selling kind of just in the area or far afield?
Far afield, nationwide. It was really successful. It was really big. It sort of, he passed away when I was 7, and he would have been in his mid-80s. So it's funny how I remember him, right? I remember him like I knew him. I feel like I knew him my entire life, but I really didn't. It was only a small part of it. But I think it's just the amount of memories that I have from that time. If you ask me, the way I remember my childhood is every weekend we would be down there, at their house, and they had a huge house with fields around them and gardens, and there would be football, there'd be running races, that's where I learned to ride my bike. That's where we would, first as a boy, right, you first get into army and you have guns and you sort of like go around hunting in the bushes and just hours and hours of free play. And sailing. He was a sailor. They had a boat moored on the river. We'd go out sailing, we'd do picnics on the boat. And then I got into sailing when he wasn't around anymore. The yacht club was just at the end of the road. So yeah, just that's kind of how I remember my childhood. It was epic.
Yeah, it sounds idyllic.
Yeah, it probably wasn't, but that's how I remember it, which is what matters, right?
Yeah, but that's in a way is what matters, isn't it? It really does sound idyllic. It sounds beautiful.
I think so, yeah.
And that connection with grandparents, I think, it can be. I'm kind of really resonating with what you're describing. I had some of that with my grandparents, and yeah, it's really meaningful, isn't it? It really is.
It is, yeah. I've done over the years. I've done these sort of storyboards where you sort of write your life story, and in a very simple way, right? But it's so thought provoking, and actually, I don't think that we stop often enough. I'm sure we're going to get into this at some point today, but I don't think we stop often enough to recognize that, and that I feel like that's such an important part of my life, and I feel like it shapes so many things about who I am today and how I parent as well. But I feel like I didn't really recognize it for a long time. I didn't do any reflection on it until I was probably in my early 30s, I would say, maybe even mid 30s. So probably less than 10 years ago, I did this reflection, and it's so powerful, just bringing those memories to the surface. I feel a real connection to all of my grandparents, actually, all four of them. I was really lucky to know all four of them really, really well. So yeah, actually, I still have one. I've still got my.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my mum's dad turned 100 last year, October last year. Wow. So absolutely incredible. Yeah, and he's still, it was that, I think this year was the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and happened to be spending some time with him around that celebration period, and he could recall what he was doing. He was in the Navy, so he was telling my eldest, Ralphie, who's nearly 6, all about his experiences. I've actually got a voice recording of it somewhere. It's really
was he in the Channel on D-Day?
Yeah, so he was an officer in the Navy, and his boat, HMS Scourge, left for their operations at 3 a.m., I think. And their job effectively was to bombard the Normandy coastline for the advanced, I guess, was it an invasion? It wasn't really an invasion, was it? It was more of a collection. That was their job. So they were on the ship, and they were on that ship, and yeah, they saw all sorts. But he spent most of his time in the North Sea, sort of protecting the shipping convoys.
Yeah.
Like
amazing. That's extraordinary to have that.
Incredible.
To have that living connection still is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and he's amazing. He's had an amazing life. He's been knighted, so he's a High Court judge. He's gone on that journey, and there's a few. One of his best friends, who unfortunately passed away last year, wrote a memoir about his time in the Navy. So my grandpa features quite heavily in that as well. Some stories.
Oh wow, that is extraordinary. And were they as much a part of those early years as your dad's parents, or not so much?
Yeah, in a slightly different way. So they lived in Birmingham, so a little bit further away, not too far. But we would spend, time with them, but it would be different. It didn't feel like you wouldn't do school pickups, right? My gran would come and pick me and my brother up from school. We'd go and hang out there, and she'd do lots of babysitting, stuff like that, and we'd be there for Sunday lunch. Kind of really felt like every week. Whereas my mum's side, it was more you'd go for a weekend or down to Birmingham, where you'd go for a birthday, or there'd be a big family party at Easter or Christmas, and we do holidays as well. So we holidayed quite a lot down in South Devon. We had a timeshare. They had a timeshare down there, and we'd go down there every year. So yeah, different. They did feature.
Oh, that's where you and Kat got married, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Same
That's
place.
right.
Same
Yeah,
place.
very,
Yeah.
very, very near. Yeah, just around the corner on the coast. Yeah, down in Salcombe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that all sounds really idyllic as a kind of what you were born into, what you kind of grew up with. It sounds rather lovely.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I think being a parent now as well, you sort of you can't help but compare, can you?
Yeah.
And whether comparison is the thief of joy or not, I think the world is very different 40 odd years down the track. But yeah, idyllic's the way that I remember it. And I think that's all that matters. That's my lasting memory of my childhood, is just that it was amazing. And I felt loved and cared for, and I had people there that I respected and learnt from. And that's kind of all I want for my kids, really. I want them to be sitting in a chair speaking to someone, having a conversation in 30 odd years' time and feeling a similar way.
Nice. And then, am I right in thinking that then your dad wasn't around?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that a
right.
thing?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was probably
When was that?
So I would have been 14, 15. It was the year before GCSEs. Sorry, I can't remember now. I think what are you, 16 when you do GCSEs?
Yeah, 15, 16, yeah.
Yeah, so it was it was around that time, which is pretty formative, isn't it? You know, that was so my granddad passed away when I was about 7, and then mum and dad separated when I was 14, 15. And that was a big loss, because again, the way that I remember my childhood is that I was daddy's boy. You know, he was my hero. You know, he was the one that we would play hours and hours and hours of cricket with in the garden, football. He's the one who, you know, we learned to play golf together when I was about 10. We sailed together. We did all these things together. And I couldn't see anything but, you know, I didn't see him as anything other than a hero, really.
Yeah.
So him leaving was a big change. He was still a big part of my life until I was first year of uni. End of first year of uni, so 19. So he's still a big part of my life for those 5 years. It was just slightly different, you know. And actually, there were probably quite a lot. Again, like, I'm going to look at it in a different way, but there were lots of benefits. You know, sure, we didn't have that togetherness as a foursome, but he only lived like 30 minutes away. So I'd go and hang out and spend the night there, and you know, we'd still do lots of things. He'd still come to cricket matches, rugby matches, and stuff like that. We just didn't have the family holidays, you know, and I probably didn't have the emotional intelligence at the time to realize and recognize the impact it had on my mum. But yeah, I think it didn't really impact me until I started to become aware of the reasons for the breakdown in their marriage. And that probably didn't come out until, I was early 20s, like late 19, 20, 21. So that then became quite confrontational and quite challenging. And it's, I guess, I would say for my entire 20s, I sort of felt like that person who I'd idolized was lost to me. And he like, as of today, he isn't a part of my life anymore. But that 10-year formative period, my 20s was quite challenging without a male figure in my life, really.
So was that like a revelation where your mum said, "This is, you're 19"? It's like, well, this is why we separated 5 years ago, or like, what was that?
No, I think she is the type of person, which, you know, she's an incredible human being, but she would never say anything ill about anybody. So she never said a bad word about him whatsoever. She she kind of left it open for him to have those conversations with me and my brother. And he never really did. Never really categorically did it. Sat down and told us everything. Probably until, I think the only time I ever had that conversation, I was maybe 22, 23. And a lot of other stuff had happened to sort of come to a head, which I look back on now and think, I mean, that's just a coward's way out, really. Talk about all the things that happened, talk about the why, and the way that it made me feel really was that I felt a big part of my idyllic childhood had been taken away from me. I almost felt like the way that I just described my childhood was sort of completely ripped up because he was off doing other things, whereas he should have been the head of the family and looking after us in a way that I want to do for my children, and he wasn't as present as he could have been. And it made me, it made me feel really deflated, I think, for my 20s. If I reflect back now on how I was, I think I would have been a completely different person if that hadn't happened. A completely different.
Wow.
It took a lot of self-confidence away from me and probably had to masquerade that and mirror that in other areas, I think.
Was it, I mean, you don't have to say anything you don't want to say, but like, was this like he had affairs or another family or something like that?
Yeah, not as dark and twisted as a whole other family,
but just affairs.
Yeah, just not. When you reflect and you look back and the nights where he was away for work, it's like, was he? Wasn't he? And just felt sorry for my mum. Really, mum was just completely left in the lurch, looking after us and going through those motions. And she put her career completely on hold to bring up 2 boys. When you just look back at the impact someone's actions can have in that way, I just, I love my mum a huge amount, and I think, well, what could your life have looked like? Would it, what would have happened? Would it have been different? I just feel sorry for her, really, throughout this entire thing.
And so you're kind of, in a way, Tom, what I'm hearing is like there are these kind of 3 chapters, very broadly, obviously, but like there's this idyllic childhood, then there's like a separation, but you're still, you're doing kind of a dissembled family unit, but you're still, dad's still there, sports events, all that kind of stuff. And then there's this moment where you kind of really separate from your dad. Like does he bail or do you bail, or like, this is kind of in your early 20s, and then was it literally like you haven't had contact since then, or was it a gradual phasing out of involvement of your dad?
He got to the point where he just had enough of being ignored. Me and my brother sort of decided that we didn't really want to have anything to do with him. So we sort of, we kind of, we're very open about it in our 20s. We both moved to London, for various different reasons. But he was in London. He's a musician. So he was there, and I ended up in London to go into personal training in the fitness industry. And we were both in this real like phase of growth and needing to, he was trying to get his career off the ground as a musician. I was trying to get my career off the ground as a personal trainer. There's a lot of similarities in those 2 roles, believe it or not. And yeah, we really came together. We really bonded, and that was one of the things that we bonded over. Really, was how do we feel about him, and have you spoken to him? We spoken to him. We just went, do you know what? I can't be doing this anymore. We're done. And then every now and again, you'd get a phone call, but you'd just be like, I don't want to speak to you. Like, I don't believe what you're saying to me. I don't trust you. Effectively, he didn't do anything to ever hurt either of us, but there were certain decisions he made that he could have shown a lot of love for us, but he chose not to. For example, he got remarried and had a new wife, and another couple of kids. One was a step kid, and then he had a child, but Like I didn't get on with her. We didn't get on with her. We didn't really like her. But it was just like he'd moved on, right? And that was kind of what had happened. So we were like, well, do you know what? We're going to move on because we can't carry this baggage. And I definitely swept everything into a little box and never opened that box. And that's what I did. And that's how I coped. And it made me angry. And I spent my 20s pretty much angry. And that definitely impacted some of the decisions I made. I didn't get into trouble, but I think the person I am today versus the person I was back then is completely different. I didn't accept all of these things. I just got my head down. I was like, do you know what? Like, I'm done with you. I'm moving on. I'm just going to do me and carry on with my life. And that's it. But it gave me a very, very black and white sense of the world, which, is kind of just how I was.
Yeah, my goodness. Gosh, there's loads there, Tom. And so, I mean, maybe there's not an answer to this, but you kind of described before how there was this sense of yourself or how the world was, like, say, before that kind of realization in your early 20s about your dad. And then there was this experience of self or how the world is after that. Could you frame those two things like in sort of opposing sentences or something? Like what was it before and what was it then? What did it then become?
Yeah, it's funny, right? And again, I don't know if this is because of some of the work I've done in the last 10 years on reflection and self-growth, but my earliest, happiest childhood memories are with my dad, like playing cricket in the garden. That's when I felt the safest, right? And I would probably have been, my son's age now, I probably would have been like 5, 6, 7. That's kind of how I remember it. All the stuff I described to you about being at my grandparents, all those sorts of things, like family lunches with my auntie and uncle and my cousins and all that sort of stuff. That was my best time, right? Sunlight, it feels really light, and the way I remember it's always summer and everyone's laughing and everyone's happy and and then the opposing stuff will be just dark, like struggle, but I can't, it's hard to separate where I was at in my life. I'd moved to London with student debt, no money in my pocket. I literally had enough money to get me a tank of fuel to drive to London. I still remember when I started working, being asked if I wanted to go out for like a work event. There was all the people from the gym were going. I think I've been there like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll never ever forget. Like it was, I think you had to pay like 15 quid for. I think it was a bowling, a 10-pin bowling or something. So you pay like 15 quid, and that got you all your bowling, a drink, and like some food or something. And I still remember turning around to my boss and being like, I genuinely don't have £15 right now. Like, I genuinely don't know. Until I get paid in 2 weeks' time, I have just enough money. I'd bought my travel card to get me in and out of London. I was like, I was staying with my cousin for free to try and like start.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really want to go, but I can't. Like, I'm sorry, I can't. And he was like, okay, I understand. He was a really lovely guy. And the next day he said to me, he's like, look, I really want you to come. I've subbed you 15 quid. Like, you can pay me
nice
if you want, which was such a nice thing to have done. But
yeah,
for me, that actually saying that I couldn't because I had no money was quite big for me. I never would have said that. I would have made an excuse. I'd have been like, oh, I can't, it's someone's birthday. I just would have like lied. But I don't know. I just sort of, I was just honest. Honesty is not always the best policy, but I think it was in that case because it allowed him to understand where I was at, and it also allowed him to understand how hungry I was to be a success. So again, when I mentioned anger earlier, I think that drove a lot of my early success was just anger and determination to make something of myself, because even though I was frustrated with my dad, he had become very successful. And I think that's probably what led to a lot of his like stuff that is extracurricular activities.
what was he doing?
So he was a solicitor, and he had sort of bought into a law firm. So he had his like practice, and then he became a partner, and then he decided to move away from that firm and set up a new firm with someone else. And it was all quite controversial because, you kind of, I think people do this in law all the time, but you just like move on, take all their clients and
Take your clients, set up your own thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much, right. So they did that. What was really cool was that when he did that, the branding of the company was the same branding as my granddad's branding. So it was like Eastham's Kitchens, and then it was Eastham Solicitors, and that was really cool. And I kind of, there would be, you'd see stuff in the papers, and he sponsored our school cricket team, and so there was one year our cricket shirts all had like Eastham's on it and stuff like that, and it was really cool. I absolutely loved that. But he was really successful. Like it did really well. They had a practice in Blackpool, they had one in Manchester, and they had one in London as well. Like absolutely flying. Just flying. So he was really successful. And then he was self-made. My granddad was self-made. And that kind of came into me as well. I was incredibly determined and motivated. And the very first business I set up was Eastham's Fitness. And when I went through all the branding and marketing with an amazing client of mine, a guy called Graham, who's an absolute legend, that's what he did, right? He did marketing, PR, and branding. So when you get asked all these questions, he's like, what's important to you? What does that look like? What's your story? Yeah. What's your dad do? Which guy? And I'm like, I've got it. This is what it is. So I sent him pictures, and he created something. And because of my rugby background, it had a rugby ball involved with it. And it was really cool. And that was like my first iteration on it. But I've digressed massively here. But that's good. I was pretty determined and motivated at that time.
What so your grandpa had died when you were 7. That was your dad's dad. And then your dad's mum, your granny, she was still around?
Yeah, she stuck it out until I'd have been 19, 20, I think I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering about like whether there was connective tissue there through your grandmother, because that had always been a home base when you were a kid. But then she died at the same sort of time that you're kind of finding this stuff out about your dad, and you're kind of going your separate ways. So that kind of connective tissue through your grandma, that went as well, right?
Yeah. So the connective tissue was my dad, his sister, and his brother. So the 3 of them together. Now, and then so my uncle Roger lives in Australia. So he lives out in Melbourne now. Used to live in Hong Kong. And so he kind of wasn't around as much, like obviously. But sister was, so Auntie Jane, and her husband, Uncle Marshall, they were still very, very close. So we'd have Christmas with them every year, and I'd come home from uni and have, Easter, birthdays. We'd all get together. We had a really, really tight-knit connective tissue. And then also some very, very good friends of my parents who I refer to as my auntie and my uncle. And their 2 boys, James and Charles, are basically like brothers to me and my brother. So the 4 of us.
Yeah, lovely.
We spent our summers together, right? So, that's kind of what we did. And then when we were old enough to drink, we'd be drinking together and getting into mischief together. And that continued and still continues to this day. We were all together on the weekend, actually, which is amazing. But yeah, that connective tissue all stuck together. But I love them, and I've got nothing but good stuff to say about them. However, there was still, for me, there's still a big missing piece for me as a man in this world. And that was sort of like the male role model, the male person to step up into my life and help me. And I had lots of people who, I'm really lucky. I've got a few uncles, and they would always at a family get together or something say, hey, if you ever want to talk, you can talk. But the thing about saying that to someone, and this is a big problem at the moment in the world with male mental health and suicide rates, is that men don't talk.
Yes, so it needs to be more than kind of give me a shout if you need to. It's like, actually, let me get in there with you, and okay, come on, we're going to get together and let's talk about what's going on for you and what are you thinking and where are you headed and tell me about it, right?
If you say to a bloke, hey, like I'm here if you ever need me. Like that's like, oh, that's a nice thing to say, but
I will never reach out because I'm a guy.
yeah, exactly. And it's not
And in fact, the worse I'm feeling, the less likely I am to reach out. Right?
100%. I'm going to retreat
Yeah,
into my
yeah,
cave and show no
yeah,
weakness.
yeah,
It's more like, hey, let's go for it. It's like, let's go for a coffee.
yeah. Right.
Let's do that. You know, hey, are
Mm,
you around this weekend, or are you around on this date, or when's the next time you're in town? When's the next time you're
mm,
here? Those sorts of never happened to me ever. And
mm,
I would come home, and again, only now or like the last few years, I reflect on it. I would come home from being in London, where I lived for like, 10, 15 years. And people would be like, oh, you're doing really well. Like things look like they're going great for you. And because, I was relatively successful in my career and my job. And yeah, like things, I guess, were going pretty well for me. But like, did I feel complete? And did anyone really sit down with me and go, like, ask me how I was? Like, no, like not at all. Not a single time. Not a single time. And
mm,
it actually makes me quite emotional thinking about it now, because
mm,
I think if people had said, like, how are you doing? Like, genuinely, how are you doing? I think there would have been a lot of cracks, and there would have been a lot of emotions come
mm,
out, and that would have been really, really helpful and really useful.
mm,
Yeah. So the nucleus was still there, but again, like there can be a nucleus and a connective tissue in a family, but is it like how impactful is it for
mm.
individuals if you don't ask the right questions or make the right effort?
Yeah, gosh, and it's such a kind of compelling story, Tom, because it really, um, you're so kind of articulate about, in a way, it's like how that young boy felt, like that young boy felt betrayed, abandoned, and then kind of having to try and figure things out, without that father figure in a way.
Totally. And I think
Yeah.
some of the most powerful, like, therapy sessions that I've experienced have been going back to that point. When you get into that sort of that state of, I had this incredible experience in Australia where I went to a talk, and I felt like this guy was literally, he was asking lots of questions to everyone, and you had this workbook to go through, but I felt like he knew every single problem I had to deal with.
Mm, mm,
And it was amazing. And he offered this course that you could do, and I like signed up to it in a heartbeat, and had a very, very transformative breakthrough session with him, which was kind of meditative but also therapy style. And it was all about that, like, inner child, and it was all about that young boy basically. And he was kind of trying to get me to go back to an exact memory that I could feel, um, and basically go into that boy and talk to him and have a conversation with him. And oh my god, it was like
mm.
streaming with
Yeah,
tears
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
emotion, and like that sort of stuff is so powerful, because I
Mm.
felt I felt invincible for the next like 2 weeks, like, absolutely invincible. But like with any practice, if you don't keep it going or keep generating it,
Mm.
it kind of falls away. But things like that have definitely helped me with being a parent in this next chapter that I've been in for a few
Yeah.
years now. Because again, I'm like, if I think about parenting, I just want my children, that because they are like my inner child, right? I want them to know
Yeah.
everything that I wanted to know back then, really.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, gosh. Well, there's so much more we could get into around all of this, and I'm just kind of in a way holding back a little bit.
So we'll save it for a
But
one-on-one.
save it for a one-on-one. But yeah, no, that's so beautifully told, that story, Tom, and it kind of sets the context for you're now kind of in London. Interestingly, you've got this reference point, whether it's conscious or not, but sounds like it's very kind of embedded in your consciousness of, like, uh, men being successful, setting up their own businesses. Like that's in the kind of the programming, in a way, of like maybe it's something like this is what men do, or it's okay to go do that, or something like that. And so you're in London, you haven't got 15 quid to get into the bowling, but you've got a lot of drive, a lot of impetus. Maybe some of that is also kind of anger, but you're kind of setting out on your way, building up your business, your fitness business. Where does the rugby come in here? Like, it's probably been a through line, but like, can you kind of segue for us into like playing rugby at a high level? How did that happen? How did that come about?
Yeah, so that was an ongoing, that was never present in my life. I was really fortunate enough to go to a good school that had sports, and they played rugby and cricket were the main sports. And I had always been told or always discovered that I had a good eye for a ball, so I could hit a ball quite well with a cricket bat and a tennis ball. And I played a really good level of cricket throughout my teenage years. I played county cricket for Lancashire. I played school first 11 cricket from the age of 15 onwards.
I mean, just on that, like county cricket for Lancashire, that's a pretty big deal, isn't it?
Age group. Yeah. I think it is.
I think it is, right?
I look back on it very fondly. I actually, unfortunately, had to go to a funeral a few months back, and was reminded by my old head teacher who was there, and that I was the only person to have captained both the first 11 cricket team and the first 15 rugby team in the same year.
Cool.
Which was kind of cool, right? I actually didn't know.
Very cool. Yeah.
I kind of knew I was the first, but I didn't know anyone had not done it since. You had lots of like crossover. It was an all boys school, right? So generally, if you were sporty, you'd be a winger on the rugby team. You'd probably be a fast bowler on the cricket team or something like that, right? And there were quite a few of us who were the core players in both teams. But I don't know. Apparently, people thought I was like a good leader of men, so I got to be captain, which was amazing, absolutely amazing, and it kind of gave me the confidence, I guess, to carry on and play sport. So when I finished at school, I was a better cricket player than I was a rugby player, much better. Like I went to county trials for rugby, but there were a couple of players who in my position who were at local schools. So there were like 4 really big rugby schools in our area. And I was a scrum half. So you only have 4 scrum halves. So the best one is going to play county. And the best one was very, very good. And he played for England, schoolboys, went on to be a professional rugby player with Sale. Very, very good player. And we actually played together at club rugby. So we were kind of friendly. But I never got in. I went to trials every year and just never made it. But when I finished school, we went on a rugby tour to New Zealand, and that's what happened right at the end of summer holidays. That was an incredible experience. We were billeted, so we didn't stay in hotels all the time. We stayed with families, which was amazing. But I went to university in Cardiff, which is a rugby hotbed. They also had a cricket academy there. And when I was deciding on what uni to go to, I sort of thought, well, they've got a cricket academy, and obviously it's Wales and Cardiff, so there's rugby. So I'll see where I'm at when I get there. And because I've been playing rugby, I just went into rugby. I just kind of went and did all the rugby socials, and sort of 3 or 4 weeks in, I was like, well, I'm embedded with the rugby club now. I'm just going to do rugby. And then I remember my mum being like, what are you doing with all your cricket stuff? Like, are you gonna use your cricket stuff? Like, because I'd taken like my coffin with all the cricket paraphernalia, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, I'm just enjoying the rugby stuff. And you can't do everything at uni, right? There was no one at uni who played cricket and rugby. You just can't at that level. And I still played cricket in my summers. When I finished at uni, I went home and played cricket at a good level with my club. but I hadn't played all year, right? So I remember going to the first net session at university, and I hadn't played cricket for about 3 or 4 months, and just being blown away by how fast the balls were coming down. And also all the cricketers were like, who's this kid? Like, what's he doing here? Like, who is he?
Yeah.
So I didn't play cricket at uni, which I kind of wish I had done. I wish I'd done it differently. But I didn't.
But you like you had the rugby crowd were welcoming you with open arms.
Open arms, like they do, right?
Right.
Like they do. Cricketers, like cricket. There's a lot of sledging in cricket. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of Mickey taking, and I never really got on with that. I like the camaraderie of rugby. There is that in rugby as well, but you kind of put your bodies on the line for each other. Whereas cricket, you just, I don't know, they tend to be quite cynical. There's quite a lot of stuff that's is this playful, or are you actually just like trying to get one over on me here? Whereas rugby's different. So I just felt like I resonated with the people more. And yeah, rugby at uni in my first year, I was a small fish in a massive pond of talent, and I ended up playing for the third team and the freshers team. I captained the freshers team at uni, which was fun. And then we used to play against all the clubs. So at uni, you had like the national league team, so you go off and play at the universities. Then you had like an inter-university league. So the freshers team was for people who were just in their first years, but you would play against like the economics team. You'd play against like, the medics and stuff like that. So you'd play against people who were very, very good players, but they didn't want to commit to play National League rugby.
Yeah.
So we just got our asses handed to us like every other week. And then we had a couple of kids who had played academy rugby, for like Gloucester and Harlequins, but wanted to come to university. And they just turned up one day and they were incredible. We stuck them in the centre and on the wings, and they just used to run rings around people. So we were fine.
Brilliant.
But that university was very pivotal for me in my entire development of life, but also my professional career, because at university, I realized how unfit I was, and that I had a good eye for a ball. I could pass a ball really well. I could kick a ball really well, but I wasn't fit enough and I wasn't physical enough. So I took it upon myself. My first summer after uni, I basically went back home and I worked in my mate's bar and restaurant that his family owned. When I wasn't working, I'd do double shifts because I wanted to earn some money. So I'd do the morning shift like over lunch, and then we had a gap for the evening shift. And in that gap for the evening shift, I went to the gym down the road and I would train, I'd eat, and I'd come back and I'd work. And I did that on repeat for like 3 months over summer. And when I got back to uni, I had a bit of money, which was great. And I was fit as a fiddle. And that changed everything for me, because then that next year, I just missed out on playing in the varsity match for the first team, had some first team games, but it meant the next year I was in. So I was in the first team.
Just on that, Tom, just to pick up on that, I think that's such an interesting kind of illustration of that, the different levers that are in play, and the kind of where you can increase the margins. So like a lot of talented people in the pool, and you've got talent, but then there's this other lever, which is, what level of graft can you bring to it, right? And then that can be the difference, where sometimes you'll see a player, I'm not saying this was you, but you'll see a player who's maybe not the most talented, but they are the hardest working, I mean, then you get the players who just seem like they're so fucking talented, they don't need to work, but probably that's less and less common, I imagine, in the professional sport now. But yeah, just that kind of willingness to put the effort in, the work in, to give yourself a chance.
I'd never had that. Like, that was, I didn't need to at school. I just didn't need to. And we had an amazing rugby coach at school who, he pushed you skillfully, but it didn't push us in the gym to be physical. It wasn't that type of school. I know a lot of other schools are like that. But yeah, uni was the moment. I remember the coach, Adrian, he was like an ex pro rugby player, and then he was in the army and stuff, and he was just like, he just called a spade, right? And I'd never really been spoken to like this before. But, he'd call me fat, and he'd call me unfit and useless. and this is 20 years ago, right? So you can't do that nowadays. You can't call someone fat and useless because you'd lose your job. But I mean, it was true. I was pretty useless and I was a bit fat. I was cooking for myself and ordering pizzas and drinking too much beer, and yeah, definitely putting a bit of weight at uni. But that experience changed everything for me because like you say, I pulled on the lever for graft and I kind of found out what I thought hard work was at that time, and worked really, really hard and played a very good level of rugby, National League at uni, played in the Welsh Premiership for Caerphilly. And that was kind of where I was like, oh, I wonder if I could, when I finish uni, I wonder if I could, go into an academy or something like that. Because it's a very different landscape.
And by the way, we're kind of like, is Wales coming into its kind of peak phase in recent rugby history around this point, or is that still a little way off?
Still a little way off. Yeah, still a little way off. But it was more, the four big teams in Wales didn't really have academies. That even though rugby had been professional for a little while, they weren't investing in youngsters in that way. So, but that didn't matter, right? Because at the end of university, about 6 weeks before my finals, I ruptured my ACL playing in a game. And then that was it. So it was like, you've got to have surgery. You've got to sit your finals. So I had to delay my surgery so I could sit my finals. But as a mark of how dedicated I was, I didn't know this at the time. This is how I reflect. I set my surgery date for the day after my final exam. So while everyone else was celebrating like a crazy person, I wasn't. I was getting ready to have surgery because I knew I wanted to play sport, and I knew that was where my life was destined to be. So, yeah, finished the exam, went for a pint. That was it. Went to bed. Mum came down that night. Took me to hospital the next day. Had knee surgery, and then moved back home and rehabbed. And I spent 10 months back home in the house where I grew up, basically working in a shitty sales job, cold calling, going to the gym, rehabbing, working with a physiotherapist. And it was that time, that graft and that hard work and that lever that I had to pull that led me to where I am today, working in health, fitness and wellness. And that was the moment for me. I was like, this is where I want to be.
But and then you so fast forwarding, you're then in London, so you've moved to London, and then you're back into rugby. You've got fit again post-op, and you're playing rugby at a club level.
Yeah, it took a while. Because first of all, the surgeon told me I'd that was it. He was like, "You'll be lucky if you ever squat below parallel again. You'll be lucky if you do have squat heavy ever again."
And let's face it, you're talking about surgery a couple of decades ago, so it's a different story now. I imagine the technology's moved on so far. I mean, I remember a surgeon saying to me, this is even before then, but it was to do with my elbow. It was no big thing, but the surgeon said at the time, he just said, look, once you've operated on a joint, it's never the same. Like, so if we can avoid operating, it's a good thing. But I think it's a very different story now. I mean,
nowadays, yeah, for sure. And
you're being told, well, that's it. That's game over, really.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. And so I got back playing again. I went to Australia for a year and played rugby over there, but I felt like my knee wasn't quite right. So when I came back from Australia and I started to qualify to be a personal trainer, I didn't play rugby. I had a whole year without playing, and I just learned about human movement, the body, nutrition, strength training. I just trained. I trained for an entire year basically and focused on building my business. And then the reason to go back playing again was because I had a really good rugby CV, and people were looking for to pay players to play in club level London's ridiculous. I mean, it's not the same now, but back then in the late 2000s, there was cash, right? You'd get paid 300 or 400 quid to play a game. So if you play 20 games a season, it's a decent amount of money. And when you're a self-employed personal trainer trying to grow your business, you're like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
If I keep myself fit, I can bank on all my rent being paid basically through playing rugby. And I was like, what's the commitment here? Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday, and be fit. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So I did that. And I ended up playing at a really low level and just having a great time because it was just brilliant. And I got a bit of cash and I got drunk most Saturdays. I made loads of friends and then I'd be back in the gym building my business and life was sweet. And then I bumped into a really, really good mate of mine who we hadn't lost touch after uni, but kind of lost touch. And he was doing the same thing, but playing for another team. And his team beat my team and they got promoted. And then he was basically trying to matchmake me with his coaches. So I ended up getting an opportunity to go and play for his team. And that was the amateur side of London Irish. So they played at the same ground that London Irish played at. So we had a good couple of years playing at Irish. And then on this, like the whole time this had been happening, I was getting fitter and fitter and fitter, stronger and stronger and stronger. My knee was fine. And I was learning about movement mechanics. And I was just able to move so much better than I ever did as a kid. And I'm talking, now I was like 26, 27, 28. And I was just moving really well. And one season we had a coach who came in and he was a Kiwi. And you'll have found this, Sam, in life, right? Sometimes you just meet people who you really resonate with and they get the best out of you. And that's one of the things I love about coaching is that I've had some coaches, rugby coaches, that just do not impact me. I don't like their style. They don't get the best out of me. Just don't gel with them. And I've had some who just turned me into a great player from like an average player. And we had a couple of those at the same time, and it was amazing, and just took me to another level. And then because we're at the amateur club of London Irish, we then had connections with the pros, and some of our younger boys would get asked to go and do pre-season with the pros. And then I remember getting this phone call one night. I was in the gym and I get this phone call from an Aussie bloke and he leaves me a voicemail telling me who he is. Can you give me a call back? And I'm like, this is a stitch up. This has to be a stitch up. The guy was a guy called Brian Smith, who was the ex-England attack coach, like famed Aussie rugby league and rugby union player. And he's leaving me a voicemail and he was the head coach at London Irish. And I was like, so I'm literally straight into my messages. And I'm like, who's done this? And I then get a phone call from our club director of rugby. And he's like, you've had a phone call from Brian Smith. It's not a hoax. Like, give him a call back. Basically, there've been loads of injuries. And it was during the Six Nations. So the international players were not around. And they'd had some injuries. So they had one scrum half and they needed me to basically sit on the bench for them. And I was like, oh shit. But okay. So I like got that experience to go and sit on the bench against, I think it was Sale at the Medeski Stadium, which was just epic. I dropped the first ball that got thrown to me in the warm up.
Well, I was going to say, did you get off of it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You dropped the first ball in the warm up.
Not in the game, in the warm up. No, in the warm up.
But don't worry, guys. The new guy's here. He's got it. Yeah.
Honestly, mate, like it was a standard.
You can trust me.
Like ridiculous. But I trained with them for 4 weeks. I trained with them, and the guy who was kind of like my boss at the time for work was incredibly understanding with me. He was like, this is an amazing opportunity for you. Like, go do your thing. We'll look after your clients. We'll make sure that everyone's looked after. So I would get up first thing in the morning at like 5 a.m. I'd go and train my PT clients. I'd get on the train from Waterloo out to Sunbury. I'd go and train with the pros. And then I'd get back on the train and I'd go back to Waterloo and into town. I'd train my clients in the evening. I'd go home. I'd get some rest, get up, do the same thing again. And it was like mental because I was just so tired, so under recovered. When all those guys are going home to recover, I'm like working.
Yeah, it's different. It's different.
So there are lots of people who do that
Yeah.
for rugby, but it just wasn't sustainable. And they said to me, like, look, we'd love for you to stick around and carry on with us. We can't pay you anything, but when the opportunity arises, there might be an opportunity, and come and do pre-season with us, get ready for next season. And I was like, do you know what? I'm 28. I've had a really great experience that I never thought I would ever have. I've got to focus on my career and my business. This is unsustainable. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze, basically. So I said, thanks very much. I'm okay. And I went back to playing National League rugby with my mates. And we had some really good seasons. And I'd tick the box, right? And I'd scratch the itch. And that was kind of it for me.
Wow, it's a big call. A smart call. A smart call, probably.
Well, I think if I was 21, it would have been different. But, go back to saying what I was saying before, that moment where I'd 15, I couldn't afford £15 to go out for a work social. And fast forward 5 or 6 years, I'm making some really good money. I've built a really great reputation for myself professionally. I'm getting invited. So I was at Fitness First. I got invited to lead education days for other personal trainers. All the head office people knew who I was. I did loads of press. In my first year of being a PT at Fitness First, I was awarded Personal Trainer of the Year for the entire organization in the UK. You had to apply for it. There's an interview process. You had to get testimonials from your clients. You had to be nominated for it. That was like a massive deal, right? I went up to the national conference and I got presented on stage, and I'm like, holy shit, this is success, right? This is where I want to be. This is it. I'm getting recognition. I'm getting accolades. I'm passionate. I'm caring, curious about movement. Like, this is what I want. And the opportunity to just go and be a bit part rugby player earning no money after everything I'd worked for, I was like,
well, and it's funny how life works, isn't it? So in a way, I mean, it's always easy to kind of paint the silver lining in retrospect, but in a way, that ACL was a game changer. It was an ACL, wasn't it? Was it?
Yeah.
That was a game changer, and maybe if you hadn't had that injury, you might have fully committed to the rugby, and professional sport is a hard taskmaster because you then commit to, this is what I'm utterly dedicated to for the next however many years. Maybe you make it, maybe you don't. But either way, you probably fast forward 10, 15 years, and then you're out in the world with, actually with tons of transferable skills, but probably no one helping you with those, how those very niche, seemingly very niche experiences and skill of, like, I'm an amazing scrum half on a rugby pitch. Like, now what do I do in the world? And I think I was telling you this the other day, a mate of mine was saying he bumped into one of the England players whose name you would completely know, and bumped into him in his gym the other day, and said, "Hey mate, what are you up to?" And he's like, "I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure shit out because I'm out in the world now, and absolutely elite player, and it's like, okay, now what? Now what do I do?" And you go, wow, that's even at that level, you're dealing with that kind of like re-entry, where it's not just given to you. It's not like all these opportunities are presented to you because you've been so fucking good at playing rugby.
That's the perception, isn't it? Because you see some people, but the people who have that are 1%. They're the 1%ers. And I think nowadays it's a lot better, but they just had this incredible documentary that they released about the 2003 winning team, where they're at now in their lives, and some of the guys have hit rock bottom, like seriously hit rock bottom. And there's an amazing, the documentary is incredible. It's called Unbreakable.
I must watch that.
Yeah, it's really it's really sad, But
Oh.
what gives them hope and energy is their togetherness and their collaborative approach, and knowing that they're not the only ones. Because you'll know this better than most, Sam, but you spend so much time in your own head thinking about yourself and your world that it can be so easy to not remember the impact that you have on others, or not remember that other people are going through things that you're going through as well. And I think probably more so today than ever that is the case, with social media and attention, the attention economy. And these guys had not, some of them hadn't spoken to each other since that World Cup win, or like since they last played for England. And there's a guy, the winger Ben Cohen, who, he's had depression. A lot of them have had mental health problems. And he said, he finished playing rugby and he had gone straight from school into an academy, into being a professional rugby player, where he's told what he needs to do at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and so on. And then he retired, and they were like, go on then, off you go and be a civvy, go and do your job. And he's like, I don't know how. I literally don't know how, and I can't articulate it as well as he does. But I feel incredibly lucky to have had found something, right, to have a calling that I kind of made myself, and I made my own choices. And that's something that I'm incredibly lucky to have, because again, if you go off percentages, like so many people in the world don't even have that choice. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and that ACL injury, not only did it maybe kind of push you a little bit away from rugby, even though you stayed connected with rugby, maybe you didn't get involved as early at the level that you might have done. And it kind of pushed you into maybe developing your business more, but also the kind of journey of having to figure out the mechanics and the strength training, all of that, has fed into what's become a real area of expertise. So it's just kind of fascinating how these things work out, really.
Yeah, I agree. It was a real sliding doors moment.
Yeah,
that ACL, it really was, because without that, I wouldn't have experienced the rehab, the mental load of not just the pain and the lack of ability, and the care I had to take over that rehab. But it was more like, one day I was at university surrounded by people who I knew really well, and I was independent. Like 3 or 4 days later, I was back home in the bedroom I grew up in, on crutches, in agony, no independence, because I can't drive any. I couldn't do anything, and I have to rely on my mum to taxi me around if I wanted to do anything. I didn't know anyone because everyone had moved on. So that year was me just determined to get back playing rugby again. And I found strength in the progress I would make, seeing my leg strength come up, just being able to go on a leg press machine and add more weight week on week, being in less pain when I had physiotherapy. Just like those small wins just kept me going. And then I also got really close with one of my cousins. She had stayed at home, like she'd gone off and done uni and moved home, and she was working locally. So we became really close again, which was amazing. But yeah, I'd say the mental load was harder. And what I wanted to do, and the reason I chose the career path that I've chosen, was I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people experience like the growth and the energy that I'd had from that shit time, and overcoming the obstacle. Overcoming that gave me so much power and confidence and determination, because I'd seen the change happen. And I was like, I didn't even know that this was possible. And I always, I think I was probably quite like a meek, milled, quiet, conservative kid. And I'm like, if I can overcome this, anyone can.
Well, and I want to get into that in a moment, Tom, because I think you've got such a gift for the work you do, in that you do have that approach of being able to kind of deliver it in a format that is really embraces the whole person and all aspects of the journey that you're going through when you're addressing kind of nutrition and health and wanting to change behaviors, et cetera, that you do have that kind of depth of lived experience and understanding that you can tackle that and understand that from all sides. So I do want to get into that. Just before we do, I just wanted to pick up on one thing you said the other day, which really struck me, but I think it's just worth kind of referencing, is in relation to the rugby training. You were saying back in the day when you were playing at the level that you were playing at, it was very much like hit it hard in training, hit it hard all week, and then go out and smash it at the weekend on game day. And that was the kind of mindset, and the strategy really was like, to be hard at the weekend, we need to be hard when we're not, when we know every other moment outside of the game too. And you were saying that's really changed in the professional game. Like, obviously these guys train incredibly hard, there's no doubt about that, but there's a different mentality of like that level of aggression that we need on game day. It may not be appropriate to have that level of intensity and aggression every time we train. Like it's a slight change. Can you just say a little bit about that, of what your observation is about that?
So in terms of what professional rugby training looks like nowadays, I definitely can't speak firsthand, but from things that I have read about and picked up on, I know for a fact that the level of contact training has dropped significantly, because what they've been finding over the last 10, 15 years of study and analysis and research is that players were getting injured in training more than they were in games. Now, if you look at what I find really interesting is nowadays, the really successful head coaches of clubs are a little bit younger than, say, even just 5 or 6 years ago. You know, they're guys who finished playing fairly recently. They're probably around our, somewhere in between the two of us in terms of age. They understand what it's like. The old school mindset, which is your Eddie Jones, your Warren Gatlands, is that you need to beat the shit out of each other to be hard on a Saturday. Now, that you can't physically do it. That's like saying to people who are in the army, you need to go and shoot people. You need to go and kill people if you're going to be good at killing. Like, well, hold on a minute. Like, surely there's a way we can look after each other a bit better. Now, when I played, we were training, aside from, the small block of intensity I spent with the pros, the majority of time it would be Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday. Now, if you had a good game on a Saturday, then Tuesday would probably be like some conditioning work, some skills, some moves, bit of tackling practice. If you had a bad game on a Saturday and you had an old school coach, you would have the shit beaten into you on a Tuesday, because it was the only way that you can teach these boys
that standard. Yeah.
How to be good on a Saturday. Get back up to
that level of aggression and intensity on the Saturday. Yeah.
And it's the same thing, right? They're all old school coaches, and this is how we did it, so this is how we have to do it. What they never realized was that actually you could probably get more out of these guys by having a slightly different approach. So what I was really lucky to experience is we had a few younger coaches come through because of our connections with the professional side. So we had access to like a nutritionist, and we had access to some strength and conditioning coaches. So we would get protein powders. Also in our team, there were like 4 personal trainers. So we'd get asked our opinion on certain things, like what should we do for warm-ups? What should we do for stretching? Can we do a strength program for the boys? Like, can we get a Facebook group going where everyone's sort of in it together training? So I feel like we were a little bit different towards the end of my career anyway. But yeah, we'd have like tubs of protein powder, tubs of creatine. There'd be shakers for the boys. Every now and again, I remember doing a nutrition talk for our boys all about performance nutrition versus standard nutrition and what that looks like. And there was a lot of mick taking, but it was good fun, and it went down pretty well. And that was like my first iteration into that like strength and conditioning, performance coaching for a sports team. But yeah, like the mindset was, I need to beat performance into these guys, rather than like, can we coerce performance out of these guys? There was no mindset stuff. It was just hit people as hard as you can, shout at people, stamp your feet, then we'll get a good result.
Yeah. No, I think there's a kind of nice analogy to be teased out here, which I probably got to do a bit of work on, but around kind of people, execs working in intense environments, the work environment, like
Oh,
it may not be a rugby field, but
totally.
it's, like the necessity to be smart, be strategic. You can't be at full tilt all the time, even though it feels like that's what the job may demand. So there's a better way that's more sustainable, that allows high performance and then maybe periods of absolute peak performance. But there needs to be also kind of the ability to be playing the long game, to be able to kind of take your foot off the gas and have the recharge, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's all kinds of good parallels we could draw there, but I just thought it was quite a nice observation of a change in mindset. Like when you're talking about the absolute elite guys working at the top level, how they're thinking about it now,
Yeah.
which is different from how they were thinking about it not so long ago.
Well, I mean, definitely, I think it's helped by advances in science, and it's also helped by open-mindedness and curiosity and accessibility of new methodologies. Because if you actually look at what is a good performance, and I think that's a great question to ask anyone in any field that they're in. So whether it is boardroom, office, rugby pitch, triathlon, high rocks, CrossFit, like what is a good performance? What does that look like? There's so many metrics that go into that. And you look at what British Cycling did with their marginal gains approach. Can we improve performance without putting additional stress on the individual? Like if we take our pillows with us on the Tour de France, is that going to get a better performance? Like, yeah, because it's your pillow, and it's going to help with anatomy and things like that. If you've got a high level executive who, I don't know, maybe they've got a really important trip that they're going on. They're going to the States, right? And they're presenting, or they're presenting to investors, or there's a really high level stressful moment that's pivotal. What can you do to be in the best performance mindset possible for that moment? There are so many things you can look at: pillow, hydration, like nutrition, your mindset. Have you meditated? Have you journaled? Like, what are you doing with your breathing? Like, are you wearing your lucky pants? Like, all of these things can go into it. It's not as simple as I need to do my speech like until I'm blue in the face, and I need to bust a gut, and it's 5 a.m. and I'm getting up early because that's what successful people do. That's the same mindset, right? It's the old school rugby mindset of how are we going to perform well on Saturday? We're going to beat the shit out of each other. How am I going to be ready for this meeting? Well, I'm going to go until I can't go anymore.
Prep and 4 hours sleep and all of that. It's not always the best way. Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
There's so many parallels.
Well, look, Tom, I want to kind of move it into your work and what you do and how you do it. So, well, why don't you just kind of spell out what is it that you do?
I've been ready for this question because, I've been on it's been a journey, right? And I think the best way to sum it up is I help people get a result. That's pretty much it, right? The way I advertise my services today is nutrition coaching. I love that field of topic because it's accessible to everybody. One of my sort of taglines is I help athletes get a better result. Now, what is an athlete? Well, if you move around every day, I'm going to class you as an athlete. It doesn't mean you have to be performing in a triathlon or an Ironman or a high rocks or a CrossFit or a run or whatever. I would say most humans are athletes first and foremost, and that's the mindset that we're going to have.
Yeah, and I think framing it around nutrition is really interesting because I think there are probably very few people who aren't in some way, they haven't got some kind of thought or relationship with the nutrition, which is like, I'd like this to be better, or I struggle with this, or no matter how hard I try, I can't quite seem to change that. Like, I think that's such a universal experience. And, maybe there are people who are kind of go, no, I'm really dialed in and it comes really easily and it's just natural and whatever. And then cool, that's great. That we all want to be there. But But I think for most of us, there's always some kind of sense of this could be better. I'd like it to be better. And then it's like, and to your point, I love the way you approach it, Tom, which is it gets very individual. So it's like, let's not talk about a kind of cookie cutter. This is what good nutrition looks like. It's like, let's talk about you. What are you really trying to achieve? Why is this important? Where are you trying to move the dial? And then let's talk about nutrition in that context. Like that may be very different to what someone else is trying to achieve, and what becomes important in where you move the dial in terms of nutrition, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way I always describe it is that it's one part science and it's one part psychology. So there are scientific rules and principles that govern nutrition. So, for example, there are lots of stats out there about how much protein one should be eating. Now, it's a range. For example, you could argue every person should be eating at least 1 gram of protein per kilo of body weight as a start point. If they're a person who is a bit more athletic and training hard, then you can go up to 2 grams per kilo per body weight. That's kind of a rule. What I like is that if that's a rule and people know that, and that's out there as free information all over Google and all over social media, that is not like a magic formula that I've come up with. That's just a rule. What I like is, how can I help someone make that part of their day every single day? Like, what's stopping them? So I love the behavior change. I love behavioral science. I read philosophy at university, so I think that's a lot of that's where it comes from. Humans and questions and what gets people going, which I think is kind of one of the many reasons we got on so well. And I think sometimes, you mentioned it before, Sam, if people are like, what's good enough? Like, how can I be good enough? Sometimes I will just say to someone like, you are good enough already. You need to cut yourself some slack. You're doing a really, really good job. Like, we're looking at progress here, not perfection. That's the main rule. Like, are you any better this week than you were last week? And if the answer is yes, a little bit, amazing. Let's celebrate that win. Let's use that to give you the confidence, the self-confidence to keep moving in the right direction, keep moving forwards. Because everyone knows about these protein, carbohydrate, and fat rules and calorie deficits and whatever. But why are people not doing it? What's your struggle? Why do you want it? What's powering you?
Right. And then even before that, like, and because we work together, you help me with my nutrition, and even before that, kind of defining what is a good performance. Like, what are you wanting here? Like, Sam, what is this really about for you? Like, like you've come to me saying, hey, I want to, trim down. I just want to have a better diet. It's like, okay, but let's talk about why. Like, what is it you're really aiming for? What is a good performance for you? Because that gets to be very individual. And sure, there may be some buckets that a lot of people can relate to, but I think getting into the nuance of what am I really trying to achieve? And yes, like, let's acknowledge that, yeah, it is about physique, but it's also about, I just want to have more energy in the day, So, and then you kind of go, well, are either of those things really about weight? They're probably not, actually, because you could have more energy and a great physique and be a heavier weight than you are now, kind of thing. Or, it's like,
Totally.
let's get into the nuance of what it is that you're really, what represents a good performance here. Are you trying to train for an event? Are you, whatever it is, right? Are you wanting to sleep better? Are you, and then you kind of get into, okay, now we know what the performance is, that, now we know what we're aiming for. And then it's like, then that part that you're talking about there about, okay, and then now what's stopping you? What's getting in the way? All of that kind of stuff. Is that making sense?
Definitely. You hit the nail on the head. There's what is healthy, right? What is a good diet? It's so varied. And if you go off what the supermarket tells you is healthy, you're probably not going to be in a great place. If you go off what the government tell you is healthy, you're probably not going to be in a great place. If you go off what you think is healthy, where does that come from? What stories have you been told over your entire life to give you that understanding of health? I don't have an an opinion on what healthy is, because it's such an objective word. Like, I want to give you a subjective result based on what you need. So it's about coming at it with a scientific approach, an evidence and a research-based approach. I won't give anyone my opinion on something. I will ask the right questions to get them to tell me what they think about something. And sometimes, like, I would probably say, Sam, over the last like 4 or 5 years, I've moved away from strength and conditioning and personal training and performance into nutrition, because I got frustrated, right? When people would come to me and they'd be like, right, goal number 1, what's my performance? I want to look great on the beach. Sweet, we got this. And then they'll be training and they'll be pushing their training. And they'll have all these questions about, well, should I be using a barbell or a dumbbell? Because I read this thing about dumbbells and about how they activate the shoulder more and there's better stability. And then I read this thing about barbells, about how I can lift more weight. And what should I be doing for time and attention? I'm like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. The simple fact of the matter is this: you want to look good on the beach. You're training 5 hours a week to do this, which is great. There are a lot of hours left over in a week that we need to focus on to get you ready to look in the beach. You're not sleeping properly. You're not hydrating. You're drinking coffee, which is keeping you up at night. You're not eating during the week properly. You're underfueled during the week. And then on the weekend, you're going crazy because of this cheat day principle that you read about from a bodybuilding magazine 30 years ago. Like, these aren't the questions. Should I be using a barbell or a dumbbell? And not the questions we need to be asking right now.
Right.
So I had to pull myself away from that and go, do you know what? Go and do a program. Like, there's so much incredible knowledge and information and training programs out there now that don't cost very much money. Just go and follow and do your thing. What I like is getting people to understand what they need to be doing practically in their life to make a change. But they're not just making a change in a short period of time. It's more about, I don't want to just get you good. I don't want to give you a plan to get you ready for the beach. I can do that. But really what we need to do is go on a bit of a journey together so that you look good on the beach and you're happy. But then after you've had that moment where you're like, I look good on the beach, I'm happy, life doesn't end. It's not a Disney movie where the credits roll and you're successful. Like, you've got to have breakfast the next day, and you've got to get up and go again. And the last thing that I ever want is for someone to invest their time, effort, and energy with me, and then 3 or 4 months later be like, I need your help again. It's like, come on, like, let's go on a journey together and let's make sure that the stuff we do together is so simple for you to implement and powerful, because we're answering the questions that are racketing around in your head. We're going to answer those questions in a philosophical and a thought-provoking way where you're in charge, so that in 6 months' time, you're still in great shape. Because people are like, I want to get to a certain weight. You're like, cool. What happens when you achieve that weight? Oh, well, I can stop being on a diet. And you're like, oh, that's not what excites me. What excites me is making an impact.
There's so much there. I love what you're saying about the identifying the limiting factor, like the barbell or the dumbbell. Like, that is not the limiting factor here. Like, and isn't that's so common, isn't it, for all of us? I think when we're thinking about wanting to improve things and just like, hey, it's like the sort of cyclist who kind of goes, if I've got this new bit of kit that's gonna, like, it's a streamlined helmet or something. It's like, dude, that's not the limiting factor. Like, and that's not the thing. Like, okay, if you're like a super elite athlete, training at your absolute peak, that's going to make a difference. But for 99.9% of us, that is not the factor that's going to really unlock the change. And gosh, you were saying also about like helping people there's something about the kind of cycle of, I want to get this result so that I can feel good about myself. But almost it's more powerful, or the way I tend to think about things is, well, what if we start with feeling good about myself? And then from that, go after the result. right? And I think that's something that you're very tuned into with your work. It's like, let's not wait. Like, yeah, we can absolutely have these meaningful goals. What represents a good performance? These are meaningful. They're important. Let's go after it. But let's start with, I'm being kind and nice to myself, and I'm feeling good about myself. Like, that's a much nicer place from which to then pursue that performance, right? And it's probably a more secure base from which to pursue it. Like you're probably going to stay the course. You're going to get more locked in, more engaged, run the marathon rather than the sprint and then collapse. If you're building that kind of base of, hey, look, wherever I'm at, whatever I've been saying I want to change or improve, I still get to feel good about who I am, where I am right here, right now. And that's my base. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the analogy about building a house, isn't it? You build your foundations, and you don't build a house on sand. It's got to be on a solid foundation. And I have to be careful, right? Because the way that I market my services a lot of the time is nutrition. And also you've got to play the marketing game a little bit. You've got to talk about getting results. You've got to talk about losing weight because that's what people want to hear. So I can't talk about these sorts of things until I'm further down the line, but it's probably something that I'll talk about, 4 or 5 weeks in working with someone. I'm like, cool. And I have an activity which is called a destination postcard, which is all about goal setting, and you kind of write down where you want to be in 3, 6, 9 months. But it's a lot more. It's not just let's set a goal. It's a lot more thought provoking than just setting a goal. But the whole idea is trying to remind someone on this journey that, okay, if we know where you want to get to, we then also want to make sure we understand why you want to get there. Like, what is fueling you? Is it something as powerful as, well, do you know what? I've focused on my career for the last 20 years and I'm really overweight and I'm stressed and I'm not healthy. And this is an intervention. Like, cool. Okay. So let's get you healthy. Let's reduce the stress. Let's give you a simple plan so that you stop putting on weight. We maintain you and we start to lose weight, and that gives you the confidence to continue. But then also on that journey, let's tap into why. Like, why do you want to make this change? Is it because you've been told, or is it something deeper than that? And that takes a while, especially working with guys. Women are amazing to coach because they're so like open and honest, whereas guys, you have to like really get it out of them a little bit more. So it takes a bit longer. You've got to build that rapport to get them out. But then you hear some incredible stories like, like, I'm genuinely concerned I'm not going to see my kids grow up.
Oh yeah. No, you really get to what matters. It's like, okay, now we're talking. Now we've got some real motivation here, and this is important. Like, let's do this.
I think like my generation especially, we were brought up on phrases like suck it up, don't be soft, like don't cry. All of these like male buzzwords like tough it out, all of these things, right? This is how we were brought up. This is what we were told. And that doesn't work. There are moments in your life where, you have to suck it up. Like, you've got to do another 50 burpees. Suck it up. Just get them done. It'll be fine. You'll be fine at the end of it, right? No one's going to like kneel down beside you and go, it's okay if you don't want to do the burpees. You're like, come on, like, you're in this environment. Let's just you can do them slowly, but let's just get them done. But at the same time, that mindset in everyday life is really unhealthy. The discipline and motivation needed to lose weight and to feel good about yourself does not come from suck it up, get on with it. It comes from like, okay, let's just look at this objectively. You don't need to be so disciplined that you don't eat any potatoes or drink any wine ever again. You need the discipline to look ahead in your week and map out where your meals are going to come from. You need the discipline to schedule with your significant other, what are we having for dinner on a Monday night? You need the discipline to look into your calendar proactively and say, I've got such a busy week of meetings. I don't know when I'm going to stop for lunch. Okay, I know that I need 30 grams of protein at lunch. I know that I need 40 grams of carbohydrate at lunch. How can I get that every single day and not miss it? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. There's a meal delivery company who I'm going to order those meals from. Or I'm going to speak to my significant other. Can we make enough dinner so that I have enough for lunch the next day because I'm super busy? Or if we're talking about exec level people here, can I get my assistant to order in the food that I need? And can I make sure, because I'm trying to lose a bit of weight right now, instead of having biscuits served with coffee when we have clients, can we get a fruit platter? It's a different discipline. It's not like staring at the biscuit going, I'm not going to touch you and I'm going to have no fun, because that's going to end in tears. It's the discipline to be proactive and look at it from a different perspective. That's the shift that we need to make.
And I think moving away from that kind of demand to be very kind of tough and determined in that discipline to something that is just okay. So this is what I'm really kind of pointing to is like one of the big shifts I experienced after working with you, Tom, was that, and by the way, like I haven't nailed this, but it was a really good reference point, and it still plays today, is like when I was fueling better, it's like I just had more energy and I just wasn't craving. Whereas my mindset changed from I'm always trying to be in restriction because I know I've got these bad habits, these tendencies to like hit the biscuit tin, do the pudding, whatever, that aren't really on track with what I'm trying to accomplish. And so I'm always trying to exercise this sort of restriction mentality. Like if I could just reduce, then I will be more on track. And you kind of helped me kind of go, no, let's think more about how you fuel well. And let's get you fueling well. And I think you said to me, look, Sam, I think you probably need to be eating more. And I'm like, that's so weird because my mindset's been one of how can I reduce? Because, I'm wanting to trim down a bit. So it's like, you need to eat some more, but like eat more of the right things. Yeah. And then what happened was I found that, wow, I'm just feeling I've got more energy. I'm not craving. So it's not like I'm not having to have that restriction mentality because I'm not craving. So I'm not having to have that battle. And so since then, it hasn't been like a sort of like I've totally transformed, but it's this reference point. And I know I notice when I'm really going off of that and I can bring myself back in. I was just having a round of it recently where I started to go, yeah, this feels better. Like I'm fueling better. I'm eating more. I'm being a bit more deliberate in making sure every 3 or 4 hours, I'm getting another decent meal in, like I'm getting back on track and I'm not having to have this constant like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Mustn't do that. I've got to pull back because it's no longer a battle. Does that make sense?
It's such a great point to bring up, Sam, because that is definitely something that we needed to work on. And it's so common. I cannot tell you. I actually think I've just taken on quite a few new clients in the last couple of months, and every single one of them, I would say that resonates with. And everyone's different, right? They're all in different shapes and stages and different training ideas and goals and routines, but it's a common theme. It's like the result I want to get is I want to look like I train. Right? I want my body image to reflect the amount of hard work I put into the gym. Or it's like, I need to lose some weight. Cool. Every single person has that mindset that you just mentioned. I need to restrict. The problem with that is that we're not hardwired as humans to restrict. We are, we've like, how long have we been on this planet? Not that long. Our hardwired go-to is to consume because we don't know when we're next going to see food. So I meet so many people who are like, oh, it's all my fault. I can't stop eating. Like, it's my fault. Whenever I see a biscuit, I have to eat the biscuit. Or whenever I see this, I have to eat this. And you're like, it's not your fault. That's how you're designed. And just like sometimes just giving someone that permission to understand that is how they're designed can flick a switch. And they're like, really? Yeah, you are designed to find a raspberry bush and completely annihilate it because you don't know when you're next going to see a raspberry bush again. Like, you are designed to eat an entire deer because you don't know when you're next going to catch one again. Like, that's how we're designed. Unfortunately, the world we live in is the polar opposite of that. It is a world of convenience. And we are more advanced than ever, and we are fatter and sicker and unhealthier than ever before. So we have to buck the trend a little bit. We have to go against what we're being told. Now, we are also, if I just simplify it, right, would you rather be fueled by apples, potatoes, chicken, broccoli, and peas, or by a Bear Bells bar, a healthy vegan protein brownie, a low-calorie protein yogurt? Like,
I'm going with the former.
Of course.
Is that the right answer? Because
that is the right answer, Sam.
That's
ding,
what
ding,
I wanted.
ding.
That's what I wanted.
That is the right answer. Yeah. But sometimes, like, we think we have to eat high protein, low calorie this. And without going into too much scientific information, the way that we break down food in our body and the way that it actually helps us to be healthy, and to digest all the foods that we think we put into our body, and we track on MyFitnessPal or our calorie counting device, we do not break down processed foods very well. We break down real foods. Now, one of the practical challenges with nutrition coaching is that, again, people don't have a huge amount of time. So you kind of go, well, hold on a minute, Tom. How can I have potatoes when I've got back-to-back meetings all day? Like, what can I do? Like, there's a Pret down the road. I'm just going to go and grab like a tuna melt from down the road. It's only got 400 calories. I'm like, okay, but the tuna melt is going to disintegrate in about 10 seconds in your mouth. You're going to be so hungry after you've eaten it because it's heavily processed. Yes, it says it's 400 calories, and yes, it says it's got 20 grams of protein, but it's not as simple as that. Just because it says it and you put it in your mouth does not mean that is what is actually up into your body.
Just quickly on that, on the Pret thing, what about the Pret chicken salad? Is that a better option, or do you still think that's not?
You've got to make the best option that you have available to you in that moment in time. So chicken, yeah, I recognize it. Salad, yeah, good. But you can get eggs in Pret, kind of like boiled eggs.
Yeah.
If you can identify that food is real and whole, like regardless of, is it organic, is it free range, regardless of all those questions, if you can identify where it comes from and you recognize it, then yeah, I'd say that's a really solid option.
Because I definitely will hit that Pret salad option, with the chicken, and then I might get some kind of like fruit bowl, or like the muesli bowl or something after
nice.
Granola bowl, but I got to say, I feel pretty good after that. Like, I feel it feels good. It's filling. I actually feel like I've got nutrition. Like, whereas I don't feel that so much with the sandwich. It's a lot of bread. It's a bit heavier. It might be tasty, but it's not the same kind of sense that I get of like, I feel fueled.
Totally. And there's so many biological reasons for that. Bread, I have such an issue with bread. Bread is, if you look at the ingredients that go into bread nowadays, it's just mind-boggling. You can't pronounce half of them. I won't give my kids bread. I will give them sourdough, where I recognize all the ingredients. I'm very, very cautious about that. My brother-in-law makes sourdough, and one day I would like to make my own sourdough, because, again, I don't have a problem with bread. Like, I don't have a problem with carbohydrates. What I have a problem with is ultra-processed foods masquerading as health foods. If you go and look at Hovis or Warburton's, like, there are about 70 ingredients. Like, isn't it just supposed to be flour, water, like eggs, and salt? I'm pretty certain that's kind of how it was when my gran was making it in her kitchen when I was little. And she wasn't, throwing in all these chemicals. But again, our generation, we grew up on Hovis and Warburton's. So you kind of like, my mum's a great example, right? She has Hovis and Warburton's and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, mum's in this generation. She's just turned 70. She's in this generation where, everything needs to be low fat and everything should be like, I don't want too much sugar and things like this. But if you actually look at the ingredients, I'm like, And then there's that brilliant example of how long does it take you to eat a piece of sourdough bread versus a piece of like your normal white bread. And if you ever try it out, because you don't have to chew the white bread, it will melt in your mouth. Whereas the sourdough is chewy. It takes us a long time. And again, we probably haven't got time to go into it today, but one of the most important things with losing weight is to slow down the speed at which you eat your food. A lot of studies have shown that you can shave off 300 calories a week just by slowing down.
Yeah. See, and that isn't about restriction. It's not about massive self-discipline. It's an easy win.
It is. And there are practical tools that you can look at to help people slow down. But yeah, I think, again, to your point, Sam, like, we restrict the food that's good for us, and we sort of fall into this trap of,
that's a really nice way of putting it. It's that you've really framed, that's a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because the way you frame that is, because my mindset would be one of, I've got to restrict. So I end up restricting the good stuff, the meals, and then I'm just lured into the pull of all the stuff that's been so strategically crafted to tempt me and hanker to my cravings. So it's like I just start moving the wrong way altogether. I'm on the wrong trajectory. Whereas what you helped me do was kind of go, no, let's really start fueling, Sam. Like, let's get these meals in a way that's healthy. You need to add a bit more, not less, and it's like, okay, now we're getting it balanced. Now we're getting the fuel out, and I'm not being drawn into those kind of craving foods.
Yeah. I always get a funny look from someone when I'm like, okay, we're going to start eating a little bit more food. And they're like, but I'm here to lose weight. And you're like, I know, but let's trust it. And again, it's a process, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's do it for 2 weeks, and we'll monitor you, and we're going to start weighing in. And like, what's so cool is that you build the trust. Okay. So you build the trust with someone, and you're still getting to know each other in the first few weeks, but then they follow it. They follow the plan because you built the trust. You problem solve, you keep them on track for a 2-week period. Then they send you their check-in, and they're like, I can't believe it. I've not been thinking about losing weight, but for the last 2 weeks, I've lost 3 kilos. And you're like, okay, here we go. That's the win. Everyone needs a win. You need a performance marker. You need to know that you're moving in the right direction. It's that big moment where you're like, for a coach, I'm building trust. I've figured out a plan that I think is going to work for you. We've problem solved. Like, we need to try it. We've got the metrics in place to check in. Okay, we're good here. I'm just going to keep back and forth with you to make sure you're confident. And that's what it comes down to, right? It's confidence to follow the plan. And then boom, you get the result. Okay, now I'm all in. Now the person is all in with me, trusting everything I'm saying. And now we're just going to continue to build momentum. And then there'll be another setback, which we'll problem solve together. And then we just keep moving forwards.
So another thing that you helped me with, Tom, was you said, okay, let's, like, what are you eating? Like, include all the supplements and everything. And I have my shelf of supplements and powders and every fucking thing, like, that I just accumulated over the years of, people who I trust going, hey, this is really good. And it's not that any of them were necessarily bad at all, but it's like, there was just massive stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I put it all in a fucking smoothie in the morning. And, that's how I start my day. And, and you were like, all right, Sam, I mean, and I was like, so like, what does it cost to train with you? And like, and you were like, Sam, like, what if you just were like, we got your nutrition working a bit better and you didn't need to have all that shit. Like, and like, what are you spending on that? Like, it's like, oh, okay. Like, I could probably fund what we're doing together like twice over if I wasn't buying all this other shit to put in my protein in my smoothie in the morning. Yeah. And what's funny is, and I'm not against supplements at all, but right now, I just don't think I'm taking any supplements at all. But
oh wow, that's
I'm
amazing.
feeling good. Maybe there are some that I could really benefit from, but I just like, I'm not feeling the need for it. I'm feeling good. I'm training well. And that's not to say I couldn't add some supplements in usefully, but it's a bit of a change of mindset again.
Yeah, which is amazing to hear, because again, there's, we're all at the mercy of the information we're fed, right? And we are fed information left, right, and Chelsea. So I get it. Like, I get it all the time. And I'm tempted because I'm a human, right? And look at this new wonder supplement that may well help me shave a minute off my next High Rocks time. I'm like, well, I can justify paying this money for that. But I think the real thing with supplements is that you need to, first and foremost, I do tell people or advise people that they might need a supplement for this and this reason, this and this reason. I'm not anti-supplements at all. But the only way to tell if it is actually worth the money is to stop taking it for a little while and reintroduce it. Is it working? I've been taking curcumin, which is the active ingredient from turmeric, right? And I've been taking that ever since I was diagnosed with like a problem in my neck, which is a disc bulge, and it creates all sorts of problems in my shoulder and my elbow. And also I've got a lot of, the knee we talked about earlier on the podcast. There's probably inflammation there as well, and early arthritis. So curcumin helps with reducing inflammation in the body. So you can just sprinkle turmeric onto all your meals, but you need to eat a lot of turmeric. So I'd take that. Aside from that, some magnesium for sleep. And then I know I'm deficient in vitamin B because I've had blood tests done. So I take a vitamin B supplement. Every now and again, fish oils if we're not eating that much fish. That's it for me. Like, I might have a protein powder after a workout, and there's a bit of creatine in there as well. But pretty much it. Compared to where I used to be a long time ago, I would take every single thing I could get my hands on to get me a result. But it's not until you try these things and realize, and you come out the other side, and you look at the evidence and you look at the research. There was just a recent expose on creatine gummies where there's a company who made millions by turning creatine powder into these little gummies that you can eat, bit like Haribo. But it turns out that actually those little gummies didn't have anywhere near as much creatine as they were saying. You can buy a bag of creatine for £10 and it'll do you 100 servings and that'll last you a very long time. Whereas these gummies are costing 30 quid for, I think, 30 servings. Like, there are people out there trying to make a lot of money out of us, and they're preying on our weaknesses and our insecurities. And I just think you need to stop and question before doing these things. Like, is it actually working?
Yeah. And again, for me, it really came back to that fundamental change in mindset, which is like, hey, let's just get the fuel right. Let's focus on good fuel. And then, if there are some supplements that are helpful after that, great. But let's not look for the supplements as the solution. Let's look for fueling well as the solution, and everything comes from that.
They're the top of the pyramid. I like a pyramid analogy. So at the base of the pyramid, you've got activity, movement, community, fresh foods. And then you go up again. And then once you've got those in your life, now we're starting to look at, okay, do we need like a specific training split? Do we need to have a macro split in there where we're looking at how much protein, fat, and carbohydrate we're getting? And then on top of that, you're like, okay, cool. Do we need to track our calories? How much food are we consuming as well? And then on top of that, you go again. And then right at the very end, you've got things like supplements right at the top, because they really don't make any difference to an individual if the base of the pyramid is not full of like the right amounts of food, the right types of food. Do you have a diet that is diverse in fruits and vegetables? Are you going to help your gut microbiome? This is the big thing at the moment, right? Gut health. You see these Zoe tests that have exploded into the industry in the last couple of years, and people are telling you to take probiotics. Like, if you're eating a balanced diet of fruits and vegetables, and you're getting between 20 and 30 different types every week, you're going to have a healthy gut microbiome. You don't need to spend £30 a month on a probiotic. But not many people are willing to put the discipline into making that happen. They would rather just take a pill, which is fine if that's your choice. But if you step back from that decision and think about it practically, like, probably it would be a lot better for me in general if I manage to get more fruits and vegetables into my diet, then
right.
just
Well, you're
rely
probably
on
not
health.
like, if from your probiotic pill or whatever it is, you may not get all the kind of benefits of the better energy and the,
But
you know,
won't.
better sleep, etc. Your gut might be better, so that's a good thing. But you don't necessarily get all those other benefits. Yeah, so you smashed it at High Rocks.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy. I sort of I wanted a 105 was my sort of target, something in the 105s, which would have been sort of nearly a quite a significant improvement. Would have been about just under 2 minutes. And you don't really know where you're at in the race because you have a running clock on you. I mean, I have my watch on, so I had a running clock, but you don't know how long each station is going to take you, and the runs aren't precisely a kilometer. So you have to I guess you have to let it all go. And this is the benefit of it. I think it's probably this was my fifth one. So coming into it, I felt really well prepared. I was nervous, but in a good way. I wasn't scared. Sometimes I've been a bit scared to be like completely frank. That's probably the only way I can describe it, the only emotion I can describe it. And I think that fear comes from, I don't know, like lack of the unknown, really. How are you going to feel? Are you going to let yourself down? Has the training paid off? And I've been feeling really good in this recent training block. And I don't know, I had a really simple plan. My plan was just to go a bit quicker in the transitions this time, because I sort of noticed the data from the last few races. I probably was sitting around the 50th percentile of my transitions, which surprised me. So I thought, okay, I can go a little bit quicker there. And then not like there's a couple of little nuances in some of the movements that I wanted to be better at. But apart from that, it was just find your breathing when you get back on the run and go for it. So I came into had that moment like halfway around where I was like, oh shit, I'm way off target here, and can finish the fourth station. And that's kind of in your head, you're like, well, that's the halfway point, right? There's eight stations, 8 runs from halfway. And I looked at my watch and I was like, I don't think I'm going to make this. And then I had this little voice in my head that was like, you don't know that. It's not going to be 5 minutes each run. It's not going to be 4 minutes each station. You just don't know where you're at. Just keep going with your plan. Just get back to like the two things to focus on: transitions and then like moving with presence. And they were the two things that I wanted to focus on the whole time. Then I got into like the very last bit, and it was so cool. This the way they'd set this one up. So you had the 7 stations were all sort of in a line, and then the final station, which is the wall balls, were in their own little section. And you actually ran off the course. You only ran this little bit of the course when you got to the end bit to do the wall balls. And honestly, man, I'm actually getting goosebumps just talking about it. I've not really talked to anyone about this moment, but you sort of separate yourself. So everyone else is running, and you go down this little road, and you know what's ahead of you. You know you've got 100 wall balls to finish. And I looked at my watch, and I was like, okay, I think I got to the wall balls at like 1 hour, 1 minute, something like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm on here. I'm on for the time I want. And literally, it was like approaching a coliseum. So I haven't felt like that since I played rugby. When you're like coming out through the tunnel to go onto the pitch, and there's like music playing, and you've just got like your teammates around you, and you're buzzing. That's exactly how I felt. But I'm obviously on my own, just running into this section. Oh, mate, it was so good. It's such a buzz. And yeah, like the rest is history. 2 days later, very, very satisfied that all the effort paid off and all the training worked out. And yeah, there's room for improvement as well, which is exciting.
Well, that sounds amazing, Tom. And like I say, I was just messing around with my Instagram, and yours was the first thing that popped up, and it looked really impressive. I don't know much about High Rocks at the moment, but I'm guessing that time is really impressive, and it looked like you were third on the leaderboard or something like that. So obviously a massively impressive performance. But I guess the main thing is that you kind of hit where you were aiming to hit, or even outperform that.
It's like everyone some people are like, oh, where did you finish? you kind of go, well, I'm 41 years old, so obviously there's like 20-year-olds out there like who are 9 minutes ahead of me, so I'm never going to compete with them, of course. But for me, I wanted a time target. I hit my time target. I actually finished really high in my age group. I finished ninth out of like 85 in my age
Wow.
group.
Amazing. Yeah, really impressive.
I think I was 80th overall out of like 1,700 people. So, like, that's fine, right? But
Yeah.
even if I'd have come fourth, if my time had been, or third, right? If my time, actually, no, podium would have been cool. If I'd have been fourth and my time would have been slower, I'd have been disappointed, because it's like running a marathon or a half marathon or an Ironman. You're like, I have a time. This is what I want to hit. This is what I've been training for. So that's all you're pushing for. So it's again,
That's what I love about all these open events, whether it's high rocks or CrossFit or park runs, all this kind of stuff, where it's so individual. And like, whilst it's fun to do comparisons with other people and your age ranges and all of that kind of stuff, which I find really motivating, being inherently basically very competitive. But at the end of the day, like you say, there's always going to be a million people who are, unless you are absolutely that number 1, 2, or 3 athlete, there are going to be a load of people who are better than you. And so it is just about doing your own race, isn't it? And competing against yourself, really. And I love that. I find that really fun.
it really is. And you sort of it's cool. It's cool if you rank highly and you do really well. But yeah, I think like, it might be a cliche, but I think most people get it, that the best competition is always with yourself. Like, no doubt, there's no better feeling than beating yourself, because you just don't know what other people are going to do. So,
and actually, like, I get a lot of juice from sort of comparing myself to like people. Like, I go, well, I kind of know they're a bit fitter, faster, stronger than me. So if I'm keeping up with them, but in a way, that's not really about them. It's about me, because it's like, I know that they're a good benchmark, for me to be pushing myself.
definitely.
So it's not like I'm trying to beat them. It's that I'm trying to push myself to be where I think I could be, or where do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think CrossFit's great for that, because the beauty of CrossFit is there will be some workouts where you're amazing and it suits your strengths, and then there'll be some where you get humbled, which I think is brilliant because it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
With disciplines like high rocks, where it's the same workout every time, or a triathlon or an Ironman, it's the same workout every time. So you know how fast you can run, you know how fast you can do 1,000-meter row in high rocks, you know how fast you can do all the burpees, like, these things, right? So you've got targets. So again, it makes that comparison with yourself even more clinical and even more black and white. And it's still a race, so you still get impacted by all the things around you. Like, you start in a heat, so there's sort of 30 of you that go off at the same time, and you kind of recognize you will get to the ski erg at a similar time, right? So you kind of know, oh, these guys are ahead of me, and then you get to the next station, you're like, oh, I feel like I'm ahead of a few more people now. Does that mean that I've gone too quickly, or does that mean that they're not very strong? And then you don't know if these people are 20-year-olds, 50-year-olds, like, you just don't know. So you kind of just have to be like block it all out, just do your thing, go in and make it happen.
I love that. And I love that idea of running your own race and keeping to your own game plan. And I think strategy is such a good thing as well, isn't it? Whatever the event is, having your own plan, your own strategy, and I say that knowing that, quite often strategy just goes straight out the window because I get overexcited, and I wonder what the fuck's happening when I'm totally burned out halfway through. But I love that kind of self conviction of like, I've got my own plan and I've thought it through. And I think often those little tiny margins for one's own performance, where you go, well, if I just approach it this way with little breaks here, or even, and it'll depend on what the sport is, but I think those little margins can make so much difference, where you're just giving yourself that little rest, or you're taking your foot off the gas a little bit at intentional moments. That can make a huge difference.
100%. I recognized in my last race, I absolutely annihilated the second movement, which is a sled push. I didn't plan on doing that. I just hit it and felt really good. And I hit it so hard that I struggled then for the next 20 minutes of the race because I couldn't find any way to get my heart rate down.
Yeah, yeah.
So that actually, and interestingly enough, because you get given a time for each movement you do, and you get a ranking as well. So it's super competitive. So interestingly enough, I came fourth overall in the sled push on my last race, which told me that I'd gone out way too hard on that.
Okay.
Way too hard. And I knew that I had anyway, but that sort of validated it for me that I had done. So on this one, I knew that I had a tendency to do that. So I actually took a little bit longer in between each push and had a little rest. And I think on one of the pushes, I actually stopped halfway to just catch my breath, to just keep the heart rate down and make sure I didn't get too much lactic acid building up in my legs for the next run. And that felt really good. But the biggest thing that had helped would be the last training block I did. I did so much running. I've never run so far. I was doing 15K runs, 17. I think the longest one I did was a 19K run. That's the first time I've ever run longer than 15K. And it paid off, because when you do those long runs, you build such a huge amount of aerobic capacity. So
Yeah.
I also then had done lots of threshold training as well and interval work, and I'd found a way to sort of match my breathing to my cadence. So I didn't actually realize it didn't all come together until on the race on Sunday, where my plan was on the runs, just find my breathing, find my cadence. That was it. Breathing, cadence, all I need to do. And I was sort of noticing after the first lap of the course, was like, I feel good. Like, I feel like, and I'd look at my watch, and my watch, sort of my heart rate would have dropped from like 185 down to 165. And I'm like, this is great. I feel really good right now. And that, again, there's an analogy there for everything, right? All the work that you do. And it's about just having that awareness piece. And like, if you want to go fast, you do need to pause. You do need to take a break. You need to be intentional about this stuff. Like, can't go hard and fast all the time.
Well, I think you're describing, like the pieces coming together and all working out on the day. So the training is obviously the prep, and that is a massive part of it, isn't it? But then there's also your plan, your strategy, and having the kind of conviction, the confidence to stick with that, and then the awareness through the event as well. Like, and if you've got all those pieces working together, it all falls into place. I think sometimes I'm relying too much on the kind of strategy and the kind of psyche in the event, because I maybe haven't done quite enough training. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to really work with myself. But then that's part of it too, isn't it? It's like, it's a lot of guts as well, isn't it? They say it'll depend on the sport again, but there's a percentage which is training and fitness and capability, and there's a percentage which is just sheer mental fortitude, right?
Totally, mate. Totally. I think that's I really do think that's it. I think, like, when you've got a bit more experience in whatever your chosen discipline is, I think you have the ability then to make those decisions. You have the ability to become more aware of what you're doing, and make those, like, course corrections in the moment. And like I said right at the start, I feel like this is my fifth one, and I feel like I felt comfortable. I felt really confident going into it. I hadn't really correlated that all the training would specifically pay off. I knew I've gone into these races feeling like, probably apart from my first one, I've gone into each one feeling like I've trained quite well. The only difference was I'd done so much more running on this one. And I didn't really go in thinking, I've done all the running, this is going to work for me. It was more about, all right, what's done is done. Here's your plan. Let's go after the plan. And I was just quite lucky, I think, that all that training had paid off on a cellular level and on a physiological level, so that all I had to do was marry the strategy and the mindset with it, and, like, game on.
Well, look, man, that's awesome. And like two kind of CrossFitters, we could just talk all day about this and get into the, hey, let's talk about wall balls for 20 minutes. But we're going to move on, and just one quick logistics thing. When we get to the end of this session, just please leave your whatever it is, your app or browser open to let it finish uploading, and that might take a little while.
No
just
problem.
let that run till it's done. Thank you. Good, Tom. Well, look, let's jump into nutrition, and we like last time we both got off the call and we're like, and I got in touch with you saying, Tom, that was a brilliant conversation, but I don't think we really landed actually what you do with nutrition, which was really the point of the call. And we're doing it again. We're going to start to, we're talking about something else. So now I just really want to get straight into it with the nutrition and what you're doing. And I mean, start where you want, but I was thinking maybe just start with key principles, but start where you'd like.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's funny because we both had that thought process, right, independently. And I was like, "Oh, should I message Sam?" And I'm like, no, it's too much effort for him to like go and record another one. And then you sent me the message anyway. I was like, yeah, I'm with you. So yeah, I was thinking about this, how best to describe what I do, because I want it to be quite concise. So I think really, I've sort of put it into like 5 key points, really, and we can expand on each one as we see fit. But on a general level, I have a very holistic approach to nutrition. I've always felt like you can't separate food, that you can't be robotic, right? So you can't just say, here's your food, go away and eat it, and then everything will be okay. I think there's so much research and evidence to suggest that as human beings, we're incredibly complex creatures, and we all, on a cellular level, we metabolize things at different rates for various reasons, whether it's gut bacteria, whether it's hormones, but you even find societal and environmental exposure will be different for certain people in the way that they eat, the way that they consume food, and the way that gives them energy to then go forth and achieve what they want to achieve. So a holistic approach, a well-rounded approach, really, for me, will cover off social, mental, environmental, physical aspects of everything. So by environmental, I mean your surroundings, not necessarily do you recycle, which is important.
Yeah, but I love the way you're framing that, because like to me it always makes sense that everything is very individual, so it can never be cookie cutter. But even just like understanding that, the microbiotic environment within someone, their external world, their work, their other responsibilities, the family they're in, like it's all, their genetics, whatever, like their past habits to date, it all just becomes so individual that you can't look at it as like, this is the way you must do it. Like you say, it can't just be robotic. It's got to be very tailored, very nuanced right from the get-go, right? In terms of how you're thinking about it and approaching it.
Totally, man. Totally. And I think it's without going too granular, everyone's got different stories, and those stories can be psychological, and those stories are physical as well. So take, for example, the way we come into the world, right? Some people are C-section babies and some people are not. That moment, that pivotal moment, for whatever reason, where that choice is made out of your hands, it's down to doctors and your parents, and a lot of the time you have no choice and they have no choice. That decision can impact the way that you're going to metabolize food for the rest of your life. So if you aren't flushed with all of the hormones that come out of your mum when you arrive in this world, then your microbiome in your gut, the way that your body digests food, will be different to an identical twin, maybe, or a sibling who has a different journey into this world. And that for me says it all. We can't just be like, here's a food plan, off you go, because like, with the greatest respect, everyone is so different. However, I would caveat that with, I think there's a foundational principle to how everyone should approach their food, and not everyone has the power or the funds to go out and get tests done to find out exactly what is happening in their gut. I would always say to someone, look, here are the things that you can do for free. Here are the simple things that you can do for free. Try these on for 6 months and see what happens. And then if you feel like there's just something not quite right, or if in your gut you feel like there's always been a food that causes you a problem, or you just can't get the energy that you feel like you should have, then okay, maybe we need to go and get some blood tests. Maybe we need to go and get some samples done so we can figure out on a far more pointed and direct level exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, like, it's nice to live in the paradox of things. So two things can be true, seemingly opposing things can be true at the same time. So on the one hand, it's always super nuanced, super individual. And I love that approach because it means that we can all let go of this kind of pressure that we've somehow got to live up to an ideal. Like, it's like, no, we need to get to know ourselves and get really tuned in and understanding of how we operate and what works for us and what the challenges are and what the strengths are and all of that. So I love that approach. And on the other hand, it's also true to say that broad strokes, there are some core foundations that are probably going to work for everyone and we should all maybe lean towards, right?
Yeah. Totally, man. Like you've got to personalize things. There has to be a personalized approach. But that personalized approach doesn't have to be here's Sam's like specific Mediterranean diet food plan. That personalized approach could be, do you know what? Sam likes to go and work out first thing in the morning. Sam likes to go and do his thing. Sam doesn't want to eat breakfast until 10 a.m. That's Sam's approach. And that's an environmental thing. That's a societal thing potentially. Susie might be completely different. The way that we do these things have to be personalized because we're all so different in that regard. And so personalization is really important because, again, people have different needs and goals. So you've got to give people the right support. So whenever someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to lose weight, you're like, cool, okay, we can work on that. When someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to train for high rocks, like, cool, we can work on that. The fundamentals for those two people are going to be very, very similar.
Yeah.
Protein, vegetables, fiber, sleep, water, hydration, meditation, relax, balance your training efforts with days off, be social, get in the sunlight, have cold showers, all these sorts of things, right? However, then there's going to be sort of, as you go further up the pyramid, there's going to be a specific macronutrient demand for the high rocks athlete. You need your energy, you need your fuel. You shouldn't be intermittent fasting. It's probably not the best approach to getting the amount of food you need to support your training. The weight loss person, timed eating windows could work. We need to be really aware of that energy surplus and energy balance. So it's going to be a different approach. But again, foundational principles are probably going to be very similar. And then I would always caveat that with like a sustainable habit. There has to be something in there that is sustainable. So when someone comes to me and they're like, I'll always want to know their story. Like, what have you tried? What have you done? Because that's so important to understand where someone's mind is at around food and diets and how I'm going to help them achieve their goal. So if someone's like, oh, I lost all this weight and this is how I did it. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. And then what happened? Like, oh, I can't not drink wine, can I? Because, I'm in my 30s and I socialize and I like wine. I'm like, yeah, okay. So it's not a sustainable approach. So things have to be sustainable, really. I'm not a transformation coach. So, you see all these incredible before and afters from nutrition coaches or fitness coaches online, and you're like, that's really cool. What I want to know is, where is that person 3 months later? Like, have they just gone? And there's nothing wrong with going all in for an event or an occasion. There's nothing wrong with that. But then if that person has come to you to lose weight for the rest of their life and it's important, and they're on a journey of 12 weeks and they look incredible, and then 12 weeks later it's gone backwards, mentally that can be incredibly hurtful and painful to overcome. I meet so many people who've been on that journey and they feel like the only way that they can manage their weight is to obsessively track food or to not eat X, Y, and Z. And like, the most common theme I see with people, because most people come to me to lose weight. That's the number one reason why people reach out. That I need to lose some weight. I've let myself go. I'm training really hard, but I'm not seeing results. Okay, cool. So it's normally body composition. The most common theme is that people aren't eating enough because they think they have to feel hungry and deprived to lose weight. And it is like, it's such an effort to build their trust and slowly encourage them to eat more food.
Mm.
And the reason for that is scientific, right? It's not a mental thing. What's got them to that point is definitely mental, but then the reason is scientific. So if you're not eating enough fuel, you are going to really struggle over a 2-week period to be in like what we call a calorie deficit. So there's a set of scales with an energy balance, and energy in and energy out is not a simple equation. Everyone's like, oh, you need to be in a calorie deficit. It's not that simple. There's so many other factors that go in, some of which I've already mentioned today, with the way you come into the world, the way you digest food, what's happening with your metabolism, what's happening hormonally, speed of food as well. Like if you can get people to slow down in the way that they eat their food over a 7-day period, people will consume up to 20% less calories just by slowing down. So teaching people the ways to slow down is key. That's not always possible, to be completely transparent. This morning, I ate my porridge standing up because I was in the middle of 1,000,001 things and I just had to eat before I got myself ready for the morning and speaking to you. So it's, this isn't about perfection either. This is about, look, can you be better than you were, like 60% of the time? So it's got to be sustainable.
There's so much there, Tom, and I'm obviously thinking about myself as you're talking as well, and you're hitting so many kind of bases for me and questions I've had in my mind or things I struggle with. So we might circle back to some of that, but you were saying you said there are 5 core principles. You're saying so. One is that it's holistic.
Yep,
it's got to be holistic. You have a holistic approach, and that would include the personalization side. What was the sustainable habit number 2, or was?
So I'd go holistic, personal. So personal would be number 2. Sustainable would be number 3.
Okay.
And then we'd sort of get into the mindset and the behavioral side of it. So point number 4 would be, look, it's part science and it's part psychology. It really is. You've got the science side of it. So the science would sort of, what I mean by that is, again, without going too deep on this, the scientific side of things is looking at, we're looking at energy balance, energy in, energy out. We're looking at potential blood markers. We're looking at potential hormone imbalances. That's the science side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Psychological side of it is your story. What have you done? Where have you been? Again, kind of like I just mentioned, people are convinced that the only way they can reshape their body is to eat less. And that in itself is not simple, because what does eating less mean? Like if I said to you, Sam, hey, Sam, I want you to eat less food. Like, does that mean I need to eat my plate of food that I have at dinner or lunch or my bowl? Does that mean there needs to be less food in there? Because is really what we're looking at is nutrient, how many calories are in a forkful, let's say, a mouthful.
Right, because I could eat a Snickers bar and go, I haven't eaten very much, but obviously I've had a lot of sugar. Or I could have a really big plate of nutritious food with loads of veggies and some healthy protein, and that might actually be less than the Snickers bar.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So we're in this really interesting phase at the moment with, there's a big debate out there about ultra processed foods. And I think it's 60% of total food consumed in the UK is ultra processed. Now,
Mm.
ultra processed foods, they have their place. You know, Snickers bar definitely has its place. It should not be the mainstay in your day for obvious reasons, but it has its place. The problem is we live in a world of convenience. There are so many options available for us, and a lot of the time, if we don't have a plan in place or we don't have a specific understanding of how we should be eating to go with that plan, then we're left to do whatever society dictates. Now,
And just on that, Tom, you were raising that idea that we're in a convenience world, and that we've got this genetic inheritance that just wasn't geared towards self-restraint. Like that wasn't the evolutionary imperative. Like we need to be self-restrained in a field of plenty. It was the opposite. It's like if there's something there, grab it, get it in whilst you can, would be more like the genetic inheritance. So and also however that comes through psychologically, etc. So we're kind of hardwired for, if you see it, grab it, and we've created a world in which we see it all the time and we can grab it.
Yeah, exactly. So that in itself is a massive problem. And how do we fix it? I mean, me and you aren't going to fix it. The government isn't going to fix it. It's too big a problem. It really comes down to individuals taking ownership, individuals becoming aware of that, and just making a change. I've heard so many different conversations about, the government needs to do more and they need to provide more education. Education will not solve this. We've never had more education and information available for free. There's never been more information available. It will not change it. The only thing that's going to change it is for there to be a hard law that comes into place that prevents people from being able to, ruin their health. And our generation are going to be the ones, who end up maybe in 20, 30 years' time when we need urgent care from the NHS. It's going to be full of people with diabetes and full of people with cardiovascular disease. And it already is.
Already is, yeah. Already is.
I have a few clients who I work with, they have cardiovascular disease and they have heart problems. And, that fix comes from encouraging them to move, but also getting foods into their diet that are potentially going to reverse some of the problems that they're having. And that's really powerful for me because I'm like, well, I feel like I'm making a really big difference. But to go back to your point, that the sort of evolution of humans has not come as far as the environmental and societal evolution has. So we are still hardwired to see a raspberry bush and just completely and utterly annihilate it. But all you need to look at nowadays is, the confectionery aisle in the supermarket, or, we don't have it where we live, but in the city, it's Deliveroo, it's Uber Eats, it's all of these things. Started working with a guy a couple of weeks ago, and that is all he does for his meals when he gets home from work. It's not even should we get a takeaway. It's now should we Deliveroo. Even the language is changing, which I find.
I'm doing some work with Deliveroo at the moment, so I'll be finding out more about the inner workings, and I suspect there's probably a kind of an agenda of, how do we do this in ways that are healthier for everyone? But at the end of the day, it's another convenience. And like you say, it comes back to, what do we do with all this convenience? How do we interact with it? How do we manage it?
Yeah, I think I would also add that I noticed when the last time I lived in a city, so I lived in Sydney, and I noticed a big change. There would be healthy food on there, right? But to go back to one of the things we were talking about in terms of food and science. So I said to you, what does less food look like, and what does more food look like? The biggest thing you can do to be healthier is to eat more fruits and vegetables. That is the biggest thing. Now, that does not sell many t-shirts or coaching programs. It really doesn't. But in terms of the way that our body works, we have to go a little bit scientific. If we know for health purposes that we need to increase the amount of dietary fiber we have in our diet. I think on average it's about 10 grams a day is what the average person consumes. A lot of leading health experts say that we need to be closer to 50. So that's 5 times increase. Now that is a heck of a lot of food. And again, it doesn't have to come at every single meal. You just sort of need to get into the flow state of making that happen over, a week or 2 weeks and integrating that. You can have some days where you don't and some days we have a lot. The reason for that is incredibly important for how healthy we are. It's incredibly important for our arteries, for cleaning out all of the rubbish that gets stuck in there. It's incredibly important for gut health, brain health, cellular development as well. Like we literally are what we eat. So even if you're ordering in healthy in inverted commas foods, where have they been prepared? Who's cooked them? How long have they been, frozen or pre-cooked? Where are they coming from? What restaurant have you ordered from? What's their track record? Where do they get their food from? Can you trace it back? Now, that might be a bit of a stretch for a lot of us, but if you go to your supermarket and you buy fresh fruits and vegetables, or you even get them delivered from HelloFresh or any of those companies, or Mindful Chef, or Riverdale Organics, or whatever you choose, where that's come from. You can see a whole carrot, you can see a whole broccoli. There's a massive difference between how that food will impact your body if you chop it and prepare it, or if it is chopped and prepared somewhere else by someone who you never get to see, and it's covered in oils and all sorts of flavorings and emulsifiers and things like that. So from a science level, it's incredibly important that our bodies are full of fruits and vegetables. Now, again, there are some really cool examples of this. If you take a broccoli and some carrots and some cabbage, and if you whiz it up in a blender, you will see the volume of how much food is there. It's massive. If you take the equivalent in calories from, I don't know, chocolate or something that's ultra processed, or even a healthy protein or snack bar, if you take that and you whiz that up, you'll see it. Right?
There's nothing there.
So that effectively is what's happening in your stomach. So it might say, and this is one of the reasons that I'm not a huge fan of obsessive calorie counting. If you say, okay, I've got 300 calories of Snickers bar here, and I've got 300 calories of broccoli, carrots, cabbage, peppers, courgette, whatever, you name it, that the 300 calories is going to be incredibly different. Now, you put that into your stomach is going to have to work so much harder, isn't it, to digest all of the 300 calories of fruits and vegetables versus the Snickers bar. That is the simplest way to explain why it's so important to eat fruits and vegetables rather than just to count your calories. If you can increase your fruit and vegetable intake, stretch receptors in your stomach are going to have to work so much harder. You're going to feel fuller. And then we talk a lot about satiety and satiation being a really important part of body composition change, health change. It's incredibly important to not always be craving, always be hungry. So getting a protein bar that's only got 150 or 200 calories in it, but it's just full of crap, versus having all that chopped veg with maybe some hummus or something to make it taste nice, right? And you're eating all of that as a snack, it's going to keep you fuller for longer. It's going to give you more energy. Your body's going to accept it. Your body's going to be grateful for it. Long term, that's so much better for you. Now, of course, it's not always possible. If you're on the go or you're running around, you've got meetings and you're back to back, or the kids are driving you crazy, of course, it's not always possible. But the biggest thing that I'll try and get across to people is how important this is. Can we then coach you to find a way to make this happen regularly in your life?
Yeah, and so before getting into that, just to me, that is just such a great unlock, and maybe this is your real superpower, Tom, is that you're able to land that for people. And I think it's captured so well in that what you described as building up the trust with someone that they would feel comfortable eating more, which is so counterintuitive. But in my work with you, that's absolutely the thing which has stayed with me. And having the experience of what that's like, of going, oh, this is what it feels like to actually be fueled in a healthy way. The goal, and moving that mindset from I'm always trying to restrict, I'm trying to reduce because I want to have, improved composition, I want to lose a bit of weight, all of that. It's like, no, that's not about having to restrict necessarily. It actually may be about having more, but doing that in the right way.
I also think that word, like restriction, it's just such a sad word. And I don't think we need to be restricted, I'm sure a lot of your work, you talk to people about, embracing yourself, like taking on more, being more. It's not about, I want to restrict you down. Like if you want to be successful, we need to restrict you. We need to clip your wings. That is never a good way to be for a period of time. Now, I think one of the issues that I have with my industry is that, I worked in fitness operations for a very, very long time. And every single sale was all about, lose weight, don't do this, do that. And you kind of go, it's the wrong message to be selling to people. And I started off, I think I talked about this last time, but I started off working in a gym where the personal trainers were all bodybuilders, and they would give calorie restrictive diets to people. And that's the only way that they taught people to lose weight. And that's how I learned, right? That's how I learned, because I didn't do a nutrition certification to start. It was just personal training. So that was my environment. That's how I learned. That was their environment that they created. Every single member who worked with them, that was their environment. There will be some people who think that's the only way that they can walk around with a body they're proud of. Whereas like we work together, that's not true at all. And just the idea that I can't have this, can't have that, it's just a really sad way to be. And it's no wonder that is unsustainable. There's no reason you can't enjoy a few glasses of wine and still be in great shape and be proud of where you're at. Sure, if you've got a really important meeting, or you need a clear head the next day, or you've got a really important event, maybe just go drive for a couple of weeks in the run up to it. Or maybe before big training sessions, don't have that glass of wine. But you're an adult, you can make that decision yourself. You don't need to be following something that just says, no, complete restriction, do not do this.
Well, I'm just in an interesting moment myself with this, in that I have been bringing in a little restriction very intentionally, where I found that I had been getting into the habit of having a couple of beers in the evening. Now, that's totally fine. I'm not judging that per se at all, except that it's not really on track for me in terms of when it becomes every evening, and how I then feel in the morning, and the performance and the sleep and all of that around that. And I was been really struggling to get a handle on it. Like, come on, Sam, like, just don't have the beer in the evening. It's easy. But I wasn't finding it easy. It always get to that point in the evening. And so I kind of created a break where I went, right, I'm going to do some intermittent fasting, where after a certain time in the late afternoon, I'm just saying, right, I'm fasting till the morning. And really, the big reason I did that was, if I do that, then that precludes beer, that, right? And I said, I'm going to do it like Monday to Thursday, and try that on for size to see if I can just change the story on that piece. And I only started it last week, but it felt really good. And I was like, wow, immediately I'm feeling better in the morning. I'm feeling a little bit better in the gym. I just feel a bit sharper generally, like all these benefits. And I go, okay, that's awesome. But I know that's probably not how I want to roll all the time, but it served as quite a good way of just breaking a story, if you like.
Love that. And I think that, again, is why I sort of go back to point number 4 for me, which is science versus mindset, behavior, psychology, because we get stuck in these loops, and all you need to do is break the loop. One of the things I'd coincide that with environment as well, right? This holistic approach. One of the things I'll always talk to people about is, right, we're going to do a kitchen makeover this week. Are you ready for it? And some of the things we'll talk about is like, what's in your fridge? What are the things that you know you probably shouldn't have in your fridge that are in your fridge? And again, it will be things like chocolate bars, beers, wines, all those sorts of things. You go, cool, take them out. Doesn't mean we're saying no forever. It's just take them out, because you used a really interesting word there, which was intention. And you've recognized, okay, I'm having beers in the evening, I'm not feeling great the next day, I need to do something about it. That is completely different from going, I need to lose weight. This plan says don't eat, don't drink any alcohol for 30 days. That's what I'm going to do. It's completely different. Yes, that works, and some people can do that. But then my issue with that is that some people think that is the way that they have to live their life, which is not strictly true at all. You can have balance and tighten things up when you want to. One of my interesting questions for you is, did that those few beers sort of coincide with the nice hot weather that we've been having recently?
Well, no, because it's been going on longer than that, and I'm looking at the summer, going, oh man, we're hitting kind of rosé o'clock time of year, where it's very easy for this to increase even more, and so. But then the other part of breaking the cycle was, okay, I need to be doing something else in the evening.
Yeah.
Because there's this sort of period where it's like, well, I'm just kicking around and it's the end of the day and I want to unwind. So I got to do something else in that time. And so actually I was then like going to the gym or finding some other kind of job to be done, to like just keep myself busy to help break that cycle.
Yeah, because you can put something in there. So rather than just taking the beer out and just sort of sitting, staring at the beer at the fridge, wishing there was a cold beer in there, right? You can replace that habit with something positive. So yeah, like going to the gym, going for a walk,
Exactly,
practicing your putting, going out and playing paddle, or whatever.
Yeah.
What as someone who is quite time poor with 2 young children, what I found and what I have found that works really well for me is that in the fridge there will be no alcohol, but there will be alcohol-free fun drinks. So I've got some really lovely organic alcohol-free cider. I've got some of those dash waters, 0 calorie basically. And I've also found this lovely ginger apple cider vinegar kind of cocktail mix, which is full of just good things. And you mix it up in a G&T glass basically with some ice and some lemon. You give it a stir and you kind of toast my wife in the evening. And
nice.
It's just, in terms of habits and loops, it feels similar, but obviously it's not. So it's got health benefits. It doesn't leave you feeling a bit foggy the next day. So again, like taking things away, yes, is a great way of doing things, but replacing them with something positive is a far more long-term way to go about solving your problem.
Yeah, which goes back to the eat more principle. You're eating more of something that's positive and healthy, rather than trying to do less of the thing that's not really helping.
And the net result is always right. The net result is, you end up eating less of the bad stuff anyway. So the process for everyone will be slightly different. Some people don't. Some people want timed eating windows, and they're like, I'm just going to go from 10 till 6 or whatever. And you do that timed eating, you're like, cool, no problem. Some people that won't work, so you have to do a different process. But the processes can be different for everyone. Again, they need to be informed on science. They need to be informed on psychology, mindset, behavior stuff. It needs to fit their life. But for me, it's all about the process. And if we can get the process right, and it's ebb and flow, right? There's always, the way that I coach, as you know, is we'll create a process and then we'll check in. And then in a week or two's time, hey, is this process working? Is it getting us closer to where we need to go? And if the answer is yes, cool. Let's reinforce it with another thing. If the answer is no, go, okay, let's try something different, because there's no one road we need to go down. We just need to be going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. So we've got it's holistic approach. It's personalized, very individual. It's about creating that sustainable habit, finding out what that is, how to do it. Then there's mindset, which is both science and the psychology. I love that. Science is the kind of markers. Psychology is what's your story. Everyone's got their own stories. And then was number 5? Is that the environment? Is that kitchen? Is
No,
that
I'd kind of put that in the holistic approach, rather than just looking at food. Some people will just be like, "Hey, can you do me a food plan?" And I'm like, "Do that."
I think that's what I said to you. I just want you to tell me what to eat, Tom. Just make a plan and I'll follow that.
That's it. It's more, yeah. I'd say number 5 for me is protein.
Yeah. Okay.
Protein. And that's I thought long and hard about whether it should be something slightly different, but I see it, and we can go deep on this, but probably haven't got time. But protein is key, and not all forms of protein are equal. So different types of protein will be absorbed at different rates. If you can get something that is unprocessed, or as close to unprocessed as you can get it anyway, because technically even the food that we buy in the supermarket or from the butcher has had some element of processing from it. You set yourself up on a cellular level to be a lot healthier. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. Protein, fat, carbohydrates being the 3. If you're getting enough protein, we know that you're going to be in a much better situation. You're going to have a better chance of maintaining any lean muscle that you already have. And we know that to be a healthy human being, you need high amounts of lean muscle. Stage of life and development is really important for a lot of women. They just don't eat enough for whatever reason. And then a lot of the time, not just women, but men and women, when I say, look, we need to get your protein levels up, like, oh, well, have 2 protein shakes a day. And you're like, that's not technically, even though it says on the label 30 grams of protein per shake, and I'm having 2, and that's 60 grams of protein. You're not absorbing 60 grams of protein in the same way that you would do from chicken or fish or tempeh or soy, or beef. So it's a difficult one. But yeah, protein.
And just on that, Tom, that opens up a whole nother thing, really, which is, again, what I think you're encouraging people back into is, let's eat healthy meals. Like, let's have healthy plates of food. And maybe it doesn't have to be a plate, but it's like this kind of basket of food that you're preparing and you're engaging with, and it's actually satisfying and filling. And it might be even like, wow, I'm kind of eating more than I expected, or I'm having to eat more than I thought, which is very different from, let me stick it all in a blender, whiz it up. I'm on the go with my shake. It's got all the right things in it. Like we were saying last time, when we first started working together, I was like, hey, Tom, let me tell you all the things I put in my smoothie. It was like this long, all this stuff. I had no idea why I was doing most of it, but it's like just things I'd picked up along the way. But I was like, this is my hack. This is my hack for making sure I'm really taking care of my nutrition. And I think you really encouraged me, and what I hear you encouraging other people in is like, there's a place for all of that, but really let's come back to creating healthy meals, like what that means, like how you put together a meal and then fill your boots, which is different from, I've got my hack and it's about restriction, but it's precise. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's on the go, or it's efficient, and you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And again, I think I sort of joked about this earlier on. That approach doesn't sell many t-shirts. Eat like your grandparents did is kind of the tagline that would be on my t-shirt. But
Love it.
yeah, have to watch that in 20 years because it probably won't be true. But
Yeah, right.
you just think about how we were brought up, right? I can remember a clear evolution with like ready meals coming out, alpha bites and fish fingers and cornflakes and crunchy nut cornflakes and cocoa pops for breakfast, and you're like, that stuff. So I've got I've got a near 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, as you know, Sam. And he came home the other day and he was like, "What are shreddies?" And I said, "They're breakfast cereal." And he's like,
Wow.
"What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, people have them for breakfast." He's like, "Oh, can we have them for breakfast?" And these conversations where you're like, "Well, probably not. We're probably not going to have shreddies for breakfast, because right now they eat eggs, like porridge, chia seeds, flax seeds, yogurt, berries, seeds, nuts, all that sort of stuff." And I'm really proud of the effort we go to bring them up in that way. And it's not that shreddies are off the menu. It's just that I do not want to get stuck in a loop where breakfast is shreddies and cornflakes, because
All right.
it's not the way to go.
Well, okay. So I want to jump on that, Tom. By the way, can we go over a little bit? Is that okay?
I can't, mate. I've got a hard cap, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, that's all right, because we'll do this some more. But I think there's a whole another basket there around, because when you
So
said
much,
that, I immediately kind of went, "Oh my God, we brought up our kids with fucking cereals, and like their habits are so bad," and I was judging the shit out of myself. And I was like, but that is something to get into, isn't it? Because I think it's so easy for all of us to judge the crap out of ourselves, whether it's to do with how we feed ourselves or how we feed our families. And I think that can become actually a real obstacle to actually changing things. So that's maybe a conversation for another time. All right, Tom. Well, look, we've got 5 really strong bases there, which I love. Again, we could do a conversation on each one of those easily. And I definitely did have more questions, actually, but we're just going to have to do this again. Tom, just remind us, how do people find you? How do people work? How do you work with people?
Yeah, the easiest way, Sam, would be follow me on Instagram at Tom Eastham Nutrition. Pretty active on there. Sort of my main shop front. Or you can always drop me an email, which is hello@tomeastham.com. People want to work with me, reach out, just drop me a message, say hi, shoot me an email. I'm always up for a chat and a conversation. Typically, I would, before working with someone, I would want to speak with them to see if I feel like I can help them, if I'm a good fit for them. And if I can't, I'll probably be very honest and recommend someone who can. I'm actually launching a membership site this week. Actually, it's going to go live on Friday.
Very cool.
Which is cool. I don't know when this is going to go out, but that'll be probably live. The site will be live by the time this goes out. That'll be Friday I think it's the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to have all sorts of resources and knowledge pieces on there, and it'll have a live session every week that people can join. It's pretty, I like to think it's pretty affordable, and it's a place where people can reach out to me directly and get lots of one-to-one help without needing potentially, one-to-one coaching and stuff like that.
Love that, Tom. That's great. And so that membership site people can find through the Insta and through your website.
There'll be a link available on my Instagram.
Yeah. Amazing, Tom. That sounds really cool. I'm going to check that out. Brilliant. And just to remind everyone, it's Tom Eastham spelt.
Oh yeah.
Because go on.
True.
You must say this all the time.
Eastham. So Eastham. Yeah.
Tom Eastham. And brilliant, Tom. Well, look, really nice. Thanks so much for jumping on the line again.
Back.
And let's do this some more.
Definitely. Thanks, Sam.
You bet.
Speak to you soon, mate.
Cheers, buddy. Bye.